Hi everybody. Today I'm going to go over Baron Coleman's, I can see him now, yeah. His, he does mention the conversation of Dee Dee, with Dee Dee got a podcast with Lisa. Um, we'll see, I'll comment on that. But he's like, useless. So anyway, there are some, important points to make here because, my interest in this whole thing has, as you can see, if you look at the what I've covered since the Charlie Kirk assassination, was apart from finding out who, you know, what's behind the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I mean, finding out who actually pulled the trigger and, some hit job like this, government hit job like this, that's going to kind of be hard, unless you get people spilling the beans and you get, like um, emails going back and forth by some of these people. But I highly doubt that's going to happen. It might happen further down the line, but at this point, I highly doubt that. But so, apart from finding out, who everybody thinks killed Charlie Kirk, is how, the podcasters are reacting and radicalizing the situation. And oh lordy lord, they bring in a doozy. I mean, and I have to say, I misread the situation for quite a while, because I really did believe that Gary Coleman was, kind of what Alex Jones is doing now, working for the feds. Uh, I mean, Alex Jones doing some flipping lately. And of course, the reason for that would be the $1 billion that he owed and bills to pay. But anyway, I'm sorry. Um, so I want to, take a listen to what Baron Coleman has to say about, the whole thing now with the podcast and stuff. Because excuse me, Baron Coleman, he he has some good insight. He knows something about the law, which is something to be said amongst lawyers these days. I've been working for 20 years globally, and victims of the courts will say, "Can you, and if you ask them if they can recommend a lawyer, they'll be like, no." And what what really is important highlighting here, and what pisses me off even more with Baron Coleman, is that he'll even admit a lot of this is just bureaucratic incompetence. And the the courthouses and the whole legal process. Um, and that, I found out that when I started, that was in Spain in 2007, my case started. And I mean, I was horrified. And so I was just really, I mean, obsessed. I know my kids were like, my God, mom's gone crazy. And of course, my ex has, uh, you know, taken that. And because I've been separated and alienated from them ever since. I haven't seen them in 18 years, but everybody thinks it's highly amusing. I mean, I'm like, excuse me, like with the Ryan Matta movie about the problems in CPS. Taking children, okay, thank God my children weren't babies and they were adolescents. But I keep on telling, I've told everybody all of and I mean, I'm in the international community. The Federation of American Women's Clubs knows about me and my case from when it started in Spain and that I barely made it out alive. Yet they're buddy buddy, they're in bed with the UN and the international community, which is part of the Jeffrey Epstein crowd. Um, they're just as much the trad wife organizations as Phyllis Schlafly's. You've got the Eagle Forum and the Schlafly Eagle Forum with Ed Martin, because Ed Martin, Phyllis Schlafly, when Trump came along, they sided with Trump, and Schlafly's, the other members and Schlafly's, children apparently sided with, is it Ted Cruz? I mean, the only defense I've ever had, the 20 years that I lived abroad, I left at the end of the 80s and came back in 2009 to Washington, being told, oh, welcome to the club. I was, you got to be kidding me. With all the goddamn nonprofits, human rights, women's rights, children's rights, everybody's rights, it's all a big joke. And it's the Wild West. That's why I've got the um the jailhouse, Arizona jailhouse. Little, I grew up in Tucson, and I love the westerns. Those are like the precursor. Well, we did have the Perry Mason and stuff, but even that, because the black and white westerns that started in, that started becoming popular. I don't know, in the 20s or 30s or so, because you have some quite a few from that time. Anyway, apparently, when I was very little, I would come in. My favorite show on TV was it's a Gunsmoke with Matt Dillon, Marshall Dillon. And I would come in and I would say, I'm Marsh Dill, change my dipes. They say I learned to speak very early. I guess, I mean, I picked up languages easily as well, so maybe I just have an ear for languages, and I do have an ear for voices. Although it's not infallible. For example, I thought that was Erica Kirk on one of those things. Um, anyway, yeah, so I don't know. I guess it's just, justice and law and all that shit. Maybe it comes from my father. Maybe excuse me, from my grandfather. Maybe I'm my grandfather reincarnated. Who knows? Who knows? Because everybody keeps on saying, well, you should have been a lawyer. You should have been a lawyer. I'm like, well, I don't want to go to law school. Like, do we really need another lawyer out there? No, we got more than enough. Let's just submit. I prepared everything, to a T. In fact, right before we start, one of the books that I came across is The Lawful Rights of Mankind, an introduction to the International Legal Code of Human Rights. Oh, now that I'm thinking of it, make sure that my stereo's on, yeah. Um, and when we talk about human rights today, we are on much finer ground than if we were discussing the moral and natural rights of a man, which philosophers have debated for so long. Since 1945, a veritable legal revolution has promoted the installation of a complete universally agreed code of human rights in international law. This book explains for the general reader what lies behind the code, how it was made, how it works, and what it says. And I mean, perhaps to my advantage, I didn't go to law school. I had one commercial law course in business. I did a business major. Um, and we learned about courts, torts, writs, and contract law, basically. And I mean, it served me very, very, very well. And I would advise everybody to learn about, basically what I was taught, a basic course on that, because it is important just, in a contract and a lease, if you're renting someplace, in any kind of, if you're buying something, whatever. So as I say, I think that's a course that everybody should take. But it gives you the basics, and once you understand the basics and you have a noggin and you get in a bind, um, well, you can figure it out. Uh, I mean, hell, I kept on saying, yeah, my ex-husband was always getting us into problems, and I would be always getting us out. So that's how I became quite adept at understanding legal situations. But anyway, this last one was a doozy with our divorce, because I mean, sure, I'm pissed as shit with him, everything that he pulled, and there's the violence, but then there's the, I still to this day have not seen any of the financials. And I know people, it's a stupid divorce, just get on with your life. I mean, this is not, as I said at the beginning, when I saw what was happening, I was like, my Lord, I'm, going to document every single problem I find here, whether it be the paper pushing person who's in my husband's pocket at the courthouse because his cousin is on the local police force and he's involved in human trafficking. This is the south of Madrid. So no, I know what I'm up against with the courthouse. Um, but then, and in fact, it should have been moved out of that courthouse right away with his cousin working there. Because we live in the suburbs. We lived in a northern suburb of Madrid, Villafranca de Castillo, but it's the court under whose jurisdiction were the rich people. And so, of course, that's another thing I was facing, was prejudice against all of the corrupt, entitled rich people of Madrid. That, I'm supposedly one of these because that's where my $1 million house is. Which is, not true at all. But then also there's the problems with all the paperwork in Madrid. There's one place, it's near the Puerta del Sol. They always have to go there. Yeah, I mean, everybody will know that. I think it's Calle Montera. Um, so anyway, you have to get there like at the crack of dawn, because I think you can stop getting in line. I forget, at 11 o'clock or something like that. So you got a line going out, down the street. 2 hours you're going to be sitting in that line or so. So everybody who goes down, and there are people who do this part of their job. These are usually the law clerks or whatever. They're coming down there. Some people just have a business that all they do is go and stand in line for these different papers. So you'll get a lot of intel from these, as I say, the professionals who are standing in the line, and it is atrocious. And this is where all of the socialites and the social media influencers and and congressmen's daughters, like Jennifer Shaw in Florida, her father was the author of the Missing Childs Act, should be taking an interest of what's going on in their communities. This is where, with the lawful rights of humankind, there's this, still sharing, by Alexander Joel. And the thing is, and I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but the point that he makes in here is he says, well, the problem that he sees with the international conventions is that the lawyers wouldn't understand how to apply them. And I totally agree. And that's what, when I started, nobody would help me after the fiasco of my case in Spain. I get to Washington. I'm I'm knocking at doors of all the nonprofits. That's all a joke. I start with that, figuring out the problems there. But also, I have to deal with my case because, there's still the liquidation of assets that needs to go through. I know that's going to be a joke, but I have to go through the process because if I don't finish that process, well, then I've dropped the ball and it'll be like, well, no, it's her fault. So I have to make sure. And I know the lawyers were pissed off and everything. I mean, I'm not paying them. I'm like, of course I'm not paying you guys. You screwed me over. You should be suing all of the lawyers in there. And the legal community says that they don't need any regulating because they're self-regulating, meaning that if somebody does anything wrong, they're going to sue. They'll help the injured party sue the other lawyer, but that's not how it's all a protection racket. Oh, no, they don't want to sue another lawyer unless they've got something personal against that lawyer. Then they'll go after them. But they don't care about the law and they don't care about people and they don't care, it's just like the medical community. Everybody sold their soul. And this is also why I've gotten no assistance in trying to clean up, the problems within the penal system and the new Jim Crow. I mean, the Black community, I keep on going, excuse me, you're screaming and yelling about, slavery from the past. I'm like, you're too busy making money and cashing in on affirmative action to care that 90% of Black poor men are either in prison or have criminal records. And this is precisely what we're seeing with the Tyler Robinson case. He's going to get of course he's going to hand himself in because if not, he's going to get arrested by a SWAT team. And we know how that can go down. So of course he's going to turn himself in. The question is, this Mitchell guy, I think his name is Mitchell, he's the one associated with the Boy Scouts. And that's how he knew, apparently, Tyler Robinson. He apparently was the one who's saying that there's evidence that this was Tyler Robinson. Why did he say that? How did he know something about that? Who told him to say that there was something? That has to be asked and answered. I mean, that's an important question to ask that guy. Because that's key. So of course he turns himself in, and then all of a sudden, oh, he's in prison, he's guilty. I mean, Megyn Kelly jumped right in on that one. I think she's turning around right now, but she's up without a paddle because she jumped in right in on that one. And she's a lawyer and was calling for the death penalty. I mean, I was like, I couldn't, she's just as bad as Marianne Sargard. So we'll get in. So, the whole thing, I couldn't find help with putting together a case. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it myself. And I'm going to, argue this stuff. And also it's got to be in Spanish. So I filed complaints with the appropriate authorities in Spain, in Madrid, the Bar Association. Then I had the Defensor del Pueblo in there. Then there's the Instituto de Mujer. They said, we don't deal with this. I'm like, yes, you do. Now you do, bitches. And I think there's a Consejo Poder Judicial, something like that. I think that was it. So anyway, I went through, back and forth with letters in my broken Spanish. Basically them telling me to fuck off and me telling them to fuck themselves, back and forth. Because I knew that, but then because when I had read the Spanish Constitution, it all of the human rights conventions are applicable. Any human rights conventions to which Spain is signatory are are integrated into their judicial system. So I had that. I can integrate that. I don't have to wait to finish with them, then take it to the courts. I can integrate my argumentation right then and there. And that's what I did. And this goes back and forth to the Spanish authorities. I'm also with communications to the State Department because the consulate, the embassy, and the American embassy in Madrid have a responsibility to ensure that everything is appropriately examined. They're telling me to fuck off, and I'm telling them, well, going up in the chain of command, telling them to go fuck themselves. So that's basically what it basically was for years and years and years. But this is the process that I'm going to have to go through in order to, demonstrate I have done everything. I've been a good faith. I've followed the system. Your problem here is your system and the people in it. The problem is not me. The problem is not that you need another law. The problem is you need to fire the people that you got in there and hire some people who have a brain and some morals. And that goes to the lawyers and the people in your courthouses. I mean, I ended up with DC Landlord Tenant Court as well, and I found the same crap. And these people, they get away with murder, and they think it's all real funny. In fact, the last part for Candace Owens, the whole white replacement and black supremacy series that I'm doing gets into the DC court, where you have a majority of black women in the administrative function. And I mean, you talk about your hornet's nest of little vicious, viperous witches, which make Salem witch trials look like a cakewalk. And that's got to stop. I mean, the Salem witch trials got stopped because one of the governor's wife or something became involved, became part of the accused, and it was like, what's going on here? In fact, there's one of the guys here at DC. He's is that the Wilcox family of the Salem witch trials? He's over at Georgetown School of Foreign Service, and he got some. It was LinkedIn exchanges. It's not emails, but I was trying to find some journalists to start asking Tim Mellon, Tony Lyons, Del Bigtree, all of the people in Bobby Kennedy's campaign. What the frick did they like do it on purpose and destroy Bobby's chance of getting in to assure that Trump would get in, just like with the TPUSA? I mean, it's all, different factions and going after different factions. And to a certain extent, that's part of the game, and you're going to have that. But there has to be some sort of morality of what's going on and legality. I mean, Charlie Kirk said he could have gone to prison if Trump hadn't won. Now, does that have to do with money that's coming and going to places it shouldn't be? Or was it something about the campaign and Trump getting in, or a bit of both? I don't know exactly, but we do know that. So anyway, I put this whole thing, I put my own case together, been knocking at all of the doors, particularly there's Women's Linked worldwide. They're in Madrid, New York, and Bogota. And I mean, I lived in Bogota for 6 years, and my husband, he crashed and burned as the director of the Treasury Department of Banco Ganadero. And that's when he lost it, and he lost his career, and things go downhill from there. So it's all this drama that this is another thing. All of you gossip columnists and shit like that. I mean, you should be eating this up. But the thing is, my big crime in all of this, my biggest crime is I didn't fall apart. It's all pure jealousy, whether it be my sisters and my brother, or my mother, or Lucy Herman from Tucson in Phoenix. She's part of the whole Larry Summer Harvard University network. And that network involves Sharmini Curry from the Institute for Capacity Development at the IMF, against whom I have a lawsuit for all the crap, not only that the little ladies in her department pulled with me during my 4 years there, but also the policies and practices that were developed and promoted under her department, which basically encouraged everybody. What they did was train all of these central banks and treasury departments on quantitative easing and how to assure that more and more of the people's taxpayers' money is injected into the pockets of government coffers and oligarchs, and how you concentrate wealth and create dictatorships and failed globalization and what we have today. So, she's part of, and that's part of the whole, Jeffrey Epstein network. And so, you see where we are. Then there's the reason that I bring up Marianne Seigart is she is the daughter of Paul Seigart, the author of Lawful Rights of Humankind. So one would think she would be interested. This is her father's work. This would, bring her father into the limelight. I mean, I can really find nothing else. There's his book. There's this book review. There's Internet Archive. And that's the book review as well, I think. Here, there's another. Is this the same book review? No, this is just selling the book. Another distributor. So, I can find nothing on this, and I haven't found anybody in the human rights community. No, they're all too busy with the LGBT stuff. Or as Amnesty International Madrid, after reading their reports and saying, "Oh my Lord, yeah, this is what's happening to me," and I went to them, they told me human rights violations only happen in Darfur. I was like, oh great. So you see, the whole thing is a mess. And Marianne Seigart, she went to Cobham Hall. Our paths didn't cross there, but she is of the same age, roughly. She's a couple of years older than I am. An English author, journalist, consultant, radio presenter, and former assistant editor of The Times, where she wrote columns about politics, social affairs, and life in general. She has also written a weekly political column in The Independent. Her best-selling book, The Authority Gap: Why Women Are Still Taken Less Seriously Than Men and What We Can Do About It, was published by Trans World Doubleday in 2021. Now she runs the Authority Gap Consultancy, which helps organizations narrow and close their authority gap. Okay, so anyway, I'm not going to go through her whole resume, but the thing is with her family. So yes, she's the Paul Seigert, a Vienna-born human rights lawyer, campaigner, broadcaster, and author. And Felicity, she's the daughter of Felicity and Olga Howard Seigert, née Bear, chairman of the National Association for Gifted Children, a magistrate, and later managing director of the Aldeburgh Burr Cinema. See, it's all, you look into these families and it's all like entertainment and bohemian artsy fartsy stuff. Um, yeah, her mom, and then her father's the lawyer. Okay, so her parents divorced and she was raised Catholic, but her maternal grandfather was Rudolf Singer, Seigert, nay, Singer, had converted from Judaism. He was blamed for the 1929 financial collapse in Austria. And then a lot of her, and of course that lays the foundation for Hitler, but a lot of her, or several branches of her family, were exterminated in the Holocaust. So, you know, you would think that she would be like receptive to all of these issues. I mean, aren't these boarding schools just like the Federation of American Women's Clubs, all of the, you know, all of these women's groups and institutions we have, aren't they supposed to be bringing up women who will work together and for the betterment of humankind instead of just cashing in and going shopping and backstabbing witchery? I mean, really, that's what's going on. And unfortunately, you know, like Candace Owens, she's just another one. I mean, I had heard of Candace Owens before the whole Charlie Kirk thing came in, but you know, I really didn't know much about her. I did contact her because, you know, I think it was when the whole Black Lives Matter, when she got, would have been Daily Wire. Anyway, I contacted her in 2023. I'm not sure exactly what came up about that, but I was like, oh, well, you know, I've been looking at the same thing she's been looking at. The feminist movement, Freud, the damage that Freud has done. And I've been doing this for 20 years. I have tons of information. I'd be more than happy to share with her, sit down with her, explain, you know, not only what I found in my research in the literature, and all she has to do is go on to my activism website. There's the bibliography of all the books I've read. I mean, you know, I'm always somebody about complete transparency. I grew up in, you know, my mother, everything, oh my God, everything had to be a secret. You know, she would lie. I would say to my siblings, I'm like, she lies even when she doesn't have to. I mean, this is kind of also what people are not quite understanding about Erica Kirk. And even like Megyn Kelly. I'll do another thing on Megyn Kelly's reaction to all of this. But Megyn Kelly, oh, I love Erica Kirk. She's, you know, just so sweet and everything. I'm like, well, yeah, because Megyn Kelly's from that same, you know, East Coast preppy, capote swans, kiss, kiss, backstabbers. You know, I love it with Ann Woodward. She's the one who committed suicide by cyanide after Truman, her good friend Truman Capote, outed to the world that she killed her husband, and it was covered up by her mother-in-law in order to avoid a scandal. And the police just swept it under the carpet. I mean, her sons ended up later committing suicide, you know, go figure. So anyway, I've been looking at getting into, the family and family trees. I have Marianne Seigart's family in here. I've been doing a lot of different families. I mean, my own is included, which includes John Dickinson, penman of the Revolution. It goes back to the Puritan movement of Thomas Wilcox. I've been really looking into that one. That's been interesting. So anyway, here is the Farmer family. Now I can't find anything, just like with Candace Owens' mother, can't find anything where parents were, anything. So background there, it's been a dead end. And same with George's mother. Now in the mommy wars between the feminists, the anti-feminists, and the socialites, this is not looking too good for Candace and her husband. So anyway, I won't go into all the whys and wherefores of that. But as I say, I've been looking at a lot of the different branches and all the different branches. This goes back to, with him, probably about I think the 1700 is the earliest that I've gotten to, I think. Yeah, 1726. So believe me, I mean, one of these things, I couldn't believe it. Where is that? I don't want to do that. But I'll look for all of my trees now. But it's the Ashby family. That's of Quenby Hall. Because I've been trying to find the Quenby is a family name. I've been trying to find the family, but I can't find any last names really. I find them sporadically, but not family trees. But so anyway, and I know it comes from that region, Leicestershire and the Midlands of England. But this one went back to Zeus and Apollo and all that stuff when it ended from genie.com. It picked up on Wikipedia with mythological people. I mean, even with genie.com, it was mythological people. But I mean, it went back to the whole beginning. And like I mean, my mother was Catholic. Thank God we stopped going to church when I was younger, because I've never had a problem with, the Bible or anything. It's just I found the people who are most vocal about being Christians are the biggest hypocrites and the biggest backstabbers, and many, many, many times very, very evil. I mean, I was like, with my mother, I was like, well, if this is Christianity and Catholic churchism, I want nothing to do with it. So anyway, I was fascinated with that. But so there's the egg and the mythological stuff. I come upon these eggs, and in the story that comes with this tree the family tree that I'm looking at, and it's all incest. Everybody, I mean, I'm like, oh my God, the tree goes bonkers because you got, mothers mating with children. Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place. But as I say, you have the egg, and there were like 2 eggs, and out of each egg came like 3,000. I was like, oh my Lord, this does sound like, you know, uh, human production in a laboratory by a bunch of aliens to me. Uh, so anyway, this really made me, I really want to sit down because I haven't ever read the Bible, but I do want to sit down and read all of these. But there is a whole bunch of different versions that you're not finding. There's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to, I need to look at. That's very interesting. But does it actually have relevance to the world that we live in today and the problems in the court, not so much. So that is kind of on a back burner, but I find it fascinating. But so let's get into Baron Coleman because he brings up some important points about the how first off hypocritical TPUSA is being by criticizing anybody out in the press who is challenging the narrative that Tyler Robinson was the lone shooter. And like really getting angry and defensive about it. I mean, as Baron Coleman points out, it's like, well, okay, you disagree with us, but why are you getting so angry and defensive? It just makes them look more guilty, something more to hide. But then you also have to understand the mentality of these whole evangelical Christians. There's good and evil. There's no gray areas. And the implication that this is not a lone shooter and that this would implicate Trump or would implicate the military, the American military, or the FBI, that's something that how can they accept that? Their reality, their sense of reality, their the plane that they live on. Because really it's you sit down. This is why nobody can talk to anybody, because it's like they all live on these different in these different bubbles, in these different realities of and surround themselves by just insular groups of people who all believe like them. So nobody can talk to anybody because they get really angry because the other group doesn't buy into their reality. And in the reality of these evangelical Christians, I mean, these extremists are no different than the Muslim extremist or the Jewish extremist or any other extremist. I guess that's why these evangelicals are in bed with Netanyahu. But so you have to also say it's not necessarily an admission of guilt of these people. You can't jump to that conclusion. Let's just say, you have to keep that perspective when you're listening to Erica Kirk or any of the other, there's Andrew Colbert, there's Blake Neff, any of these other actors. You do have to also keep in mind that these people live in this, I loved it because Pumps Sullivan from I've Had It, she said something because she lived with, she was part of these cults. And she said, because it's like, wait a second, they sit there and they talk about the Bible nonstop. I mean, just nonstop. It's like, fine, you believe in Jesus, but you always have to be talking about, like if you actually were spending as much energy and time doing good works than talking about Bible and going to church and all that stuff, well, then we wouldn't be with the problems that we have. But she said they're taught that, they're special. God loves them more than anybody else in this world. They're so special. They're so special. They're this unique individual. And you do find that in Christian rhetoric. All of us are unique. All of us have certain talents that contribute to our community, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that you're unique, you're special. And this entitlement, this is where we get the entitlement, and this has been done with all of the, all of the secular communities as well, um, with the book by Twang and Campbell, um, The Narcissism Epidemic, Living in the Age of Entitlement and What You Can Do About it. Or no, I guess it's just Living in the Age of Entitlement. Um, but they do, they explain how this has been in part through parenting. And, one of the things, and is part of this is mothers were moving into the workforce who feel guilty. Oh, I'm going to, buy lots of, or have the best, most expensive school that I send my kids to. And all of these like psychobabble groups, enhancement groups. You're going to have your kids learn better, or I mean, there's all sorts of, I mean, when I was growing up, we had to do ballet, we had to do piano, all of those training to be a young lady. And I mean, that's great. Kids, encourage them. If they, I was interested in the guitar, encourage me to play the guitar instead of the piano, because that's what my mom wanted to play. I wouldn't have stuck with it. I don't have any talent, but I mean, that kind of happened with my son. I was like, sure, but he wasn't going to spend the time. And there's that's what you should be doing in your adolescence. Not dealing with when the lawyer in Spain, she said to me, your children, this is a divorce, you got to buy your children. Oh shoot, I already come out with some real doozies, but I mean, I wanted to leap across the desk, wring her neck and just, tell her my children are not for sale. Believe me, I was like, I'm going to see you in court. I mean, all of the, we're at the International Criminal Courts. I contacted Cuatro Casas, who was the one who was at the end. And I said, okay, let's make a deal. I just want to, I want to get enough investment money. I've been looking investment money for my social media platform. I mean, you look at Tucker Carlson, all of these people have social media platforms. I don't think that they had that in their piggy banks or in their savings account. I've been looking for investment money. Oh, but no. I've been canceled and silenced. Why? Because I've actually done some research. And I'm not willing to sell my soul, and I'm not willing to kiss anybody's ass, and I'm not willing to sleep with anybody.
He said it. It's a high IQ outfit. And who am I to argue with her? Guys, welcome in. Welcome in. Welcome in.
See, this is all he's like, I'm a high IQ outfit. I'm a high, this is one of Barron's problems. He would be much more effective if he wasn't so arrogant.
See everybody on a beautiful Wednesday night. I wasn't sure I was going to have a voice tonight, and I don't have a great voice, so my normal robust delivery might be a little dialed back. But yeah, as you come in, hit the like button. I know I don't say that enough. People come get on me. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. We had 250,000 subscribers the other night. Great progress. We have a brilliant show lined up, if I do say so myself. If you're a humble host, being humble would tell you, we got a great show lined up tonight. It's a high IQ show, building off of Candace's high IQ show earlier. We've been alleged to have been in cahoots. Don't believe that, but there have been allegations that way. But no, it's not true. We just, when high IQ people are both working on things, high IQ things happen at the same time from time to time. So,
yeah, this has also been a problem with this investigation of Charlie Kirk. There's Barron wasn't posting anything. His account started. Now he's done some broadcastings and stuff, but there's a lot of people who have, hundreds of thousands of viewers that have come onto their channels, and channels who have really launched themselves off of the Charlie Kirk assassination and made a lot of money from this. I mean, I don't make any money from this at all, and I wouldn't charge anybody, um, because I mean I could start a nonprofit, but nobody's going to give me any money because I'm not all of the nonprofits. If I mean, I know the game, I know all of the donors, I know all of the players. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
We're going to get to that. We're going to get to the creation of a patsy. Man, I hope my voice holds up tonight. We're going to get to the creation of a patsy. We're going to open that way. It's going to be using a very, very current example of what looks like to me a out in the open patsy creation. It's just plain as day. You can see it, and we'll get to that. It's pretty devastating, frankly. And then we'll talk at some point about what is the most critical evidence we don't know where it is. There's a piece of evidence that we don't know where it is. It's not a rifle. It's not a bullet. It's not a text message. There's a very critical piece of evidence. We know it existed at one time. We don't know where it currently is. And finally, we are going to look at some court pleadings because I think TPUSA may be breaking the law on a regular basis, on almost a daily basis. It's my opinion, of course. Everything's my opinion. Everything you listen to here is my opinion. It's often quite good, but I do couch it in those terms so that we can perform a program without the hassle.
But see, he says, okay, TPUSA is breaking the law, in that he's saying, they're going out there. He'll explain. They're going out there and they're saying that Tyler Robinson is guilty, is the assassin. And they can't do that because Tyler Robinson hasn't yet been tried and found guilty. So, they're violating, since they're involved in the case, they're violating the court order that, prohibits any of law enforcement or anything. That's why you'll always have, well, the accused, the allegations, until you actually have the court judgment. And this is why it is so important that we clean up the courts, because once you get, this is one of the things that nobody's understanding. Once that process is finished, it's finished. Now you can appeal, but see, the appeal is limited to, like, if your lawyer royally screwed that up, there's most of that's not is going to be like, well, that's too bad for you. And we got so much incompetence with the lawyers and party politicking, and I mean, it really becomes these problems that you might say, well, what's the big deal? It's like, no, it's a really big deal. Because, for example, he thinks that TPUSA is violating the law by doing this. So why isn't he notifying the courts of this? He's a lawyer. You see what I'm saying? No, he's just reporting on it.
From lawyers. So when we go over the pleadings, I am going to raise an issue that keeps popping up because I greatly enjoyed the other night, Dave Smith debating the Adam guy from PBD podcast. I thought it was brilliant. They did it on the Piers Morgan show. He just totally obliterated him, annihilated him. It wasn't even close. And the reason is the guy showed up and it did not look like they had a subject in mind that they were going to debate. And so they were debating two different topics. And Dave, a skilled, very masterful debater, forced the guy into a position he didn't want to be in, and then all he could do is hurl insults. It's masterful. He made him look very, very foolish. But at the same time, we were robbed of the opportunity to hear an actual debate on the issue. So I'm going to
see, this is the thing. All of these people debating this, great debate. We got another one. I mean, what do you hope to accomplish? This is just a product of managerialism. Everybody's sitting around. We need the infrastructure of our country is falling apart. We've got whores all over the place, pedophiles all over the place. The court system's in a mess. all of the kids, I'm on, my God, you got this whole, all of the kids in the schools, they're being told that they're of the wrong sex and they got to have these sex change operations. I mean, oh, America the Great, America the Great. I mean, we have all of these problems, yet a robust debate, another robust debate. I mean, I'm sick and tired of going, you saw that all the time at the IMF. God, I even told one economist, I said, you're meeting yourselves to death. I'm like chicken with your head cut off. They do it up on Capitol Hill. I go to these think tanks and I'll stand up at the end of the Q&A. I mean, I only have so much energy to put up with all of this bullshit. You know, sure, it's interesting, but in the meantime, the country is going to shit.
Bring up the charging documents today. We're going to look a little bit at the information, particularly at the probable cause statement inside the statement of facts inside the information. We're going to look at what it is they claim they have. And when we do that, I'm going to take that opportunity to explain why I think debates on this are premature. I talked to Zach Costello about this. I said, I know you enjoy debating. You're very good at it. He's a very, very smart guy, very well-spoken kid.
Yeah.
I said kid. He's about as old as I am, or maybe a little younger.
Yeah, I agree. Zach Costello. I'm like, that is somebody who should have a voice. But I mean, you get podcasters like this Tamara Neely. This little girl can find funding and backing to have a platform, and I've been canceled and told to go and jump off a bridge for 20 years. I mean, it's just, and then you guys turn around and add insult to injury by telling us that you're a capitalist system. It's all bullshit.
But maybe 10 or 15 years younger. Who am I kidding? But if it's premature to debate, it's premature to debate. It doesn't matter what, doesn't matter if you're a masterful debater. If the facts are not there because the case is not yet developed. So we'll talk about that. We'll get to all that. But I do want to get into, man.
Yeah, that's where I highly disagree. And this is one of the things that I wanted to play this. We're already into an hour, but I wanted to play this and talk about that.
I don't have a ton of voice tonight. I do want to get into the opening statement because I think it brilliantly, frankly, I was shocked that this pleading even exists, but I think it brilliantly encapsulates sort of some of the things we're seeing in the Tyler Robinson case, the Charlie Kirk investigation. And so let me get into that because the more I talk, the fewer words I have in my very limited, very weak voice today. So with that said, this is your opening statement. A filing was quietly submitted today in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia in the case styled United States versus Brian Cole Jr. A filing like the one filed today ordinarily would go completely unnoticed by nearly everyone except for those with the closest connection to the case. But this is no ordinary case. It is the DC pipe bomber case. It stems from the pipe bomb supposedly placed shortly before the January 6th protest in 2021. And this is no ordinary filing, as this filing provides us with a neatly detailed and conveniently concrete illustration of how federal investigative processes can result in the framing of a patsy while disregarding leads pointing to a government agent. The motion was filed on behalf of the defendant, Brian Cole. It was brought under Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 17C1, governs subpoenas. It requests the early return of subpoena materials. It requests the early return of subpoenas to obtain materials related to the pipe bomb incidents. The filing is stunning. In fact, the filing is so stunning, I expect it to be ignored by basically everyone in power and all of the media lackeys who run cover for them. The filing highlights the government's handling of a woman named Shawnee Kirkhoff. Shawnee Kirkhoff is a former United States Capitol police officer who was on duty at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Shawnee Kirkhoff later left the Capitol Police to take a job with the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. Shawnee Kirkhoff apparently at one point was designated as a person of interest in the pipe bomb investigation. The FBI conducted concurrent inquiries into both Kirkhoff and Brian Cole, including surveillance. Yet the motion indicates that the evidence developed against Kirkhoff stunningly was not pursued, at least not remotely as intensely as the evidence against Brian Cole. And at this point, I want to clarify something. Everything in the opening statement tonight is my opinion. It's based on my review of the motion released today. It is an informed opinion, but it is in fact an opinion. So I'm going to state things as facts, but just understand it's my opinion formed based on what I've read. And I read the whole thing. The scenario outlines at least one way patsies can be framed. The process doesn't require explicit directives from high-level officials or even fabricated evidence. Instead, it operates through routine bureaucratic decisions, classification protocols, selective resource deployment, and the inherent incentives government institutions have to minimize internal exposure. In other words, they want to shield their own employees. The following analysis is going to examine these stages in sequence, because this is the way these types of framings can occur. And I anchor it in the facts, and I also anchor it in the legal arguments that are set forth in Cole's motion. The first stage involves the emergence of these parallel leads during the initial investigation. In the pipe bomb case, the FBI developed information identifying Kirkhoff as a potential suspect, and they did so early in the investigation. This included her physical presence and her role on the day in question. And it also includes subsequent data points that warranted closer scrutiny. Simultaneously, investigators assembled a case around Cole. This is an individual with no affiliations to law enforcement or to the intelligence community. So it makes sense that agencies have to allocate finite resources, allocate finite investigative resources when multiple leads surface in a single investigation. The standard protocol allows for prioritization based on particular factors, like the perceived strength of the evidence, the suspect's background, the operational implications of pursuing each avenue. In my opinion, it appears to be common practice that leads involving current or former employees of law enforcement agencies and people in intelligence agencies often receive compartmentalized treatment. For example, the motion states that the surveillance on Kirkhoff proceeded, but the motion also suggests that the resulting materials were not integrated into the investigation, at least not with the same transparency as Brian Cole's activities. This bifurcation creates a foundation for an alternate narrative centered on the outsider. Classification and compartmentalization represents the second key. Government records frequently assign higher security designations when they touch on agency personnel, particularly when it involves transitions between places like the police and the CIA. In the Cole motion, the defense wants access to those FBI records. They want the records on surveillance, they want the interview materials, and they want the related intelligence products. And while this classification serves legitimate national security purposes most of the time, it also necessarily functions to restrict, the visibility of that information. Defense counsel in cases like this frequently encounter barriers when you request discovery because the materials may be withheld under claims of privilege. And again, these claims are made unilaterally by the government you're trying to get them from. So the motion released today attempts to compel that production before trial. And it's demonstrating that this could be admissible evidence. We are seeking admissible evidence, they actually say, central to the defense. Specifically, the defense is requesting access to exculpatory material or impeachment material, information about an alternate suspect. And without early intervention, the Patsy's case proceeds. And there's a curated set of facts that exclude the Patsy.
See, this is this is important. Without, an alternative narrative, no, we got this Patsy. This is the only possibility. And everybody just runs with it. And this is where Candace and everybody who is investigating the Charlie Kirk assassination have, rocked the boat on the system. Nobody's supposed to say anything. They're supposed to act just like Erica Kirk, just like all of the TPUSA people, and let it go. And that's what the ladies have been doing for generations. I mean, just in recent history, we can start with the reaction of Jackie O and Ethel Kennedy when their husbands were assassinated. Jackie O found herself a billionaire. I mean, my Lord, Onassis, that man, I'm like, how could you marry that gross? I mean, you talk about your sugar babies and sugar daddy stuff. Come on. And then everybody goes around saying, well, how Jackie O, I mean, Maureen Callahan, she spits on everybody, but Jackie O is like, Mother Teresa or the Virgin Mary. I mean, Maureen Callahan and Megyn Kelly are a piece of work. But see, those ladies, they get a voice, they get a platform, they're welcome with open arms. I mean, God, if I had I even sent an email to Baron Coleman. I was listening to something. I was like, my Lord, if my last name was Astor or Vanderbilt, he'd be picking up the phone so fast it wouldn't even it would be funny. Anyway, I digress. But this is important, and this is what I was going on about because when that when the narrative in that in the court case starts and there's nobody that is counteracting that narrative, that's why you're guilty until proven innocent. I mean, I saw that. I was like, what are you talking about? Like all of it, even my lawyers, that the thing is my ex-husband, he said that I was a juvenile delinquent and drug addict since the time I was 14. Yeah, since the time I was 14. And I mean, I laugh because I went to Cobham Hall in England and then Foxcroft in Virginia. Now, Foxcroft, I mean, these are exclusive boarding schools. Princess Antonia of Prussia is from Cobham Hall. We already went into Marianne Seigart. These are the aristocracy in England and the robber baron heiresses in the United States. And I mean, I laughed. I laughed at it as I mean, but then even the lawyers are telling me, because he's saying that I'm like at the house, like drunk and everything. I said, what are you talking about? I've been, researching and starting this company. Microsoft became interested in it. That's when, the web designer cyberjacked my website and the whole thing fell apart, but it's still there. He's flipping out. I'm like, what are you talking about, lady? These are lawyers that are supposed to represent me. I'm like, you people are crazy. This is absolutely ludicrous. But no, I was guilty. And, my husband said that I was a drug addict and I was useless and whatever. And until I proved my innocence, I was guilty. I mean, we saw the same thing with Mitch Snow. And when they brought him out, oh no, he's an abuser. Bah, 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 bah. None of the podcasters looked at any of that stuff. I did a whole series of that's my area of expertise. I'm more expert on that area than anybody else in this arena. Did anybody of these guys look at my podcast? No. No, they're all in their little ivory towers, and it's particularly obnoxious coming from the lawyers in the game. And they're gonna have, because I'm like, wait a second. I don't want to hear this. Oh, but you wouldn't believe it. My email, I just inundated with emails. Comes with the game. I've been telling y'all for decades, one of the big problems here, we need to get a triage. I even told Bobby Kennedy's campaign to do that. Get a triage, your administrative function with all of these feminists wanting to have a high power careers. Your administrative function has gone to shit. I've told you how to fix these problems, so I don't want to hear it. That's another area. Oh, you know everything. I know nothing. I'm just a stupid. And I mean, Baron Coleman, he is very misogynistic against trad wives and homemakers. Makes you question what he thinks of his own wife. They have 8 kids.
The third stage concerns the management of specific evidentiary tools. Specifically, in this case, we're talking about polygraph examinations. Now, I know that they're not necessarily always admissible or sometimes ever admissible, but they're key facts when you're looking at exculpatory evidence. The filing states that on November 6th, 2025, Kirkhoff took an FBI polygraph. Polygraph was related to her potential involvement in placing the pipe bombs. She provided responses to questions about whether she had placed the pipe bombs. According to the filing released today, and I'm just taking it off the filing, the polygraph examiner documented that she failed. Additionally, the polygraph examiner stated she displayed a very controlled reaction. In other words, this is something the polygraph examiners look for to determine if someone's trying to deceive. The polygraph results serve as an important internal investigative function. But when they're administered to an outsider, a failed polygraph result typically prompts an intense scrutiny. It prompts additional interviews. It warrants additional information. By contrast, the defense motion says that when Kirkhoff failed, none of that happened. It did not trigger any comparable escalation. Instead, the file appears to have been deprioritized despite the failed polygraph. This disparate treatment reflects practical consideration. Confronting a government employee with a failed polygraph carries risks. You might face internal reviews. There could be potential liability for the agency that employed her, maybe even scrutiny that could infect their relationships with other government agencies. The patsy, by contrast, faces none of these. There are no institutional protections for the patsy. Brian Cole's prosecution advanced without even disclosure.
See how he's getting into all of these procedural things that I've been bitching about and I've been documenting and challenging for 20 years on social media platforms. But of course, unless I can find lawyers to assist in implementing these things and challenging any of these people or the politicians, Bobby Kennedy had listened to me. And I'm sure maybe that's why God has him in over at HHS right now, because I'm sure he's getting his a mouthful. And I know about the problems in HHS from my father, who was a physician. And I mean, he was a world famous cardiologist. And believe me, I know all about the problems at HHS.
And this allows the government to present a streamlined case, focusing only on his alleged actions. Resource allocation and narrative construction, this is the fourth stage. This is when the patsy is really framed by the narrative. Once you have a viable outsider that has emerged as a potential primary target, investigators start applying standard techniques that strengthen that narrative. They look at cell phone data, financial records, social media activity, witness statements. These elements are aggregated into a coherent story, a coherent theory of guilt. At the same time, everything looking into the insider has diminished. In Cole's case, the motion argues that the government's awareness of Kirkhoff as a person of interest and its surveillance of her coincided with the development of the case against Cole. By the time the formal charges were filed, the public and judicial narrative had kind of coalesced around the patsy. Prosecutors received their discovery packages, shaped by these earlier choices. These emphasize the outsider's vulnerability and omit references to the protected insider. The result is a defendant who appears isolated and culpable. The defendant lacks the network of allies that might otherwise prompt a deeper examination of alternative suspects. The protection of the insider undergirds the entire sequence. When you're evaluating whether to charge an insider, you have to weigh the government's decision not only on the sufficiency of the evidence against the insider, but also all of the collateral consequences that follow from charging a government official. For example, you have to look at things like congressional oversight hearings, maybe potential impacts to the budget, damages to the very institutions of which the investigators are a part. So pursuing a patsy has none of these risks. It shuts off nearly all of these outcomes. And the Cole motion, the defense motion today, peels back that curtain a little bit. It gives us an opportunity to see this dynamic playing out in real life and in real time. The motion seeks to pierce the compartmentalization before trial and force the consideration of evidence against Kirkhoff at a stage when it can still influence the case. So the motion released today represents at least one limited measure available to a patsy. The filing demonstrates how a defendant can argue that specific identifiable materials like FBI surveillance logs, interview notes, polygraph documentation, or any other interagency communications are relevant and admissible. The legal standard under 17C requires a showing that the subpoenas seek evidence that is admissible. It has to be relevant, and it's not otherwise procurable with reasonable diligence. We don't know how the court will rule on this. Whether it will be resolved in favor of the defendant really depends on the court's willingness to engage all of these factors we've talked about. In many instances, unfortunately, classification claims and government assertions of irrelevance prevail. And believe it or not, this actually happens. And when it does, it typically seals the fate of the patsy. Broader operational patterns, designed on their face for good governance and good government, unfortunately contribute to the outcome. For example, agencies have these protocols for handling sensitive subjects. And these protocols include things like...
Yeah, and see, the thing is, everybody knows these games, these manipulations. In fact, I keep on saying, you just Google, winning a custody battle in X country of the world. Boom, pop up. You'll find a book of somebody who's written a book on how to stick it to your spouse, how to stick it to your wife, how to stick it to your husband. I mean, there's all sorts of books. How to work the system, how to work the system. Oh, and it's not just the courts. Business. This is like Erica Kirk is a product of that. So is Candace Owens. Um, I mean, she has talent. I mean, she's a pretty girl. She's well spoken. She's obviously not stupid. Um, and yeah, again, I would, let's say I had I could get my project off and I could find the funding for global expats, because part of it would be, the social media. There's, I mean, like Cosmopolitan, you always want to have like the magazine type of thing. Um, and the serious subjects as well as beauty, makeup. I mean, every woman, no matter how smart or dumb, they kind of want that stuff, or most of them are interested in it. Anyway, you know, I'd hire her. But at the same time, as I say, she doesn't want to share the limelight. I mean, this is, my Lord, this is out of control. I'm like, look at Ingrid Betancourt, presidential candidate, Colombian presidential candidate, 2002. She got kidnapped. That didn't go so well. Then, by the FARC, she was kidnapped and held for 8 years. But then she went and sat and studied human rights law at Oxford ever since, and jumped into bed with all of the French government. See, once again, I got a crossover with Candace on the stuff with the French, and I know the information I have would be very helpful for her in seeing the big picture. This is about working together. This is all, the book, Tripping the Prom Queen, Susan Barash Shapiro. She, gets into all of this, the backstabbing, witchery, and jealousies amongst women, and that's why they won't work together. I was like, well, thank you if you explain why. 20 years, and I just keep on knocking on doors. And I mean, my favorite is the Women's Democratic Club, the National Women's Democratic Club here at DuPont Circle, night before the 2016 elections. I'm on my home. I pass by there on my way home, and I walk in. They're all having, it's rah, rah, rah. And I walk in, and I'm like, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. They didn't like me one bit. Go away. Nobody likes to hear the truth, and that's why they don't like me. As I said to my sister, just because I'm not popular doesn't mean I'm wrong. Nicole King, this journalist, she was my neighbor in Madrid. Same thing. Oh, well, you're just one voice against us millions in the press. I'm like, lady, that's not going to be very well when I get you all into court. My God. She's complaining about how the like the IRS in Spain, they're going in to people's accounts and just taking money from the foreigners. And I was like, you didn't want to hear about these problems with the banks when it was my divorce so many years ago because you were sitting pretty? Now y'all are screwed. There's a huge British retirement community in the south of Spain. Oh, they really shot themselves, not in the foot, but in the head.
Like layered review processes before any action can be maintained against an insider. These protocols are designed to protect sources and methods, but they create predictable asymmetries. Think about it. When a patsy's charged, that all works against the patsy. Even if the patsy was charged without a conscious decision to frame a patsy for a crime he didn't commit, the patsy's still likely doomed. Most patsies have limited resources for self-defense, and they don't have the security clearances necessary to challenge things like classification. So once charged, the patsy's pretrial detention and natural incentives to take a plea further reduce the likelihood of a prolonged challenge to the government's narrative. The outcome, of course, is a guilty plea or a guilty verdict, almost always, against the patsy. Public reporting focuses on the conviction of the identified defendant.
And this is also, the new Jim Crow with the Black community, the poor Black community. This is precisely why they have such a high rate. They just take a plea deal. And it's devastating. It's devastating for these men and for their families. We have, single moms within the Black community. I think that's higher than any place else. I mean, I don't like to pull things out without the statistics, but it is a big issue, and it's been promoted. It's been promoted. We have evidence. There's one journalist who, I think he was a real suicide. Might have been killed. But anyway, you can go on. That's, what's her face? It's a congresswoman, a Black congresswoman. It's on our Wikipedia page, the thing. I mean, Congress people have been knowing about this for decades and decades and decades and decades, and they don't want to do anything. Capitol Hill, they just want to pass another law. I'm like, would you stop passing the freaking laws you're making? Because all the lawyers are just utilizing them however which way. You need to clean up the courts. It's the same thing with the banking systems. You need some people who have some morals and scruples within the system, instead of a bunch of con artists and criminals, and anybody who challenges them and calls them out is either called crazy, stupid, a liar, or whatever, but is marginalized. That's got to stop.
And internal agency records about the insider remain restricted forever. In the Cole matter, the motion is trying to disrupt this. It wants to compel the production of these materials while they can still be used. But even if it's not granted, whether it's granted or not, the filing itself underscores that for most investigators and attorneys working on a case against a patsy, framing the patsy often emerges from just the ordinary functioning of government, the ordinary functioning of investigative bureaucracy. Usually it's not some sort of exceptional misconduct. Let me say it a different way. For most of those people working on the case against the patsy, this is the investigators, the prosecution, it does not require a conspiracy beyond the cumulative effect of routine choices: classify, compartmentalize, prioritize, and resolve. And that is, mercifully, on my voice, your opening statement. Guys, this could be a long show. I'm not sick. I don't feel sick at all. But my voice is absolutely toast. That's why I have a toast, a blackberry soda, probiotic kombucha by Hum, not a product placement. All right. I want to jump into tonight. I've got to recap an episode we did.
This is another thing that really bothers me with Americans. This whole idea of having more and more and more and more is, just better. No, I mean, there are people starving in this world. There are problems and everything, and everybody wants to produce. This gets into all of my work on economics and Machiavellian style communities versus the Machiavellian and the Machiavellian and Machiavellian style communities that everybody wants to promote versus the Adam Smith, because Bernard Mandeville, whores, prostitutes, soldiers, pimps, drug addicts, drug producers, those produce an economy. We agree. But I don't think that that's something that the State Department, the World Bank, the IMF, the UN, and governments around the world should be promoting as a sustainable, productive model for their communities and their societies, in which what they've been doing.
did on March 15th. So that was a little over 2 weeks ago. Because I want to show you how cutting edge you are if you watch this program. Yesterday, news broke about a bullet fragment. Or Tuesday, I guess, news broke. Monday, news broke about a bullet fragment. Everyone was talking about it yesterday. Everybody was talking about it Monday night. We even covered it Monday night. But I'm going to take you back to March 15th. If you look at the top up here, to a program we did on this very show, bullet fragment allegedly recovered from Charlie Kirk, autopsy inconclusive. Guys, we were 15 days ahead of the news. We were 15 days ahead of everyone else. I'll play a brief clip of that right now.
See, it's all a race. Who gets there first?
I want to go to switch.
I remember this was before Christmas. I was like, my Lord, what's going on? Because patriotic housewife was crying, and because Baron Coleman apparently had threatened to destroy her because she had stolen some of his content. And I was like, what are y'all talking about? So anyway, I spoke with patriotic housewife. I told her about all of my work and everything that I'm doing. She puts Ryan Matta with the problems in CPS up on her podcast, but and said that they were looking for, she on her platform, she and her partner were looking for like crime stories and stuff like that. I'm like, ooh, I got baskets all over the place. Take your pick. We can go to town, any that you want, any of your platforms. You want to talk about these things? I got all sorts of people, all sorts of cases. I mean, there's the whole Mitch Snow stuff that would be great to expose that, and the problems that, that's not just Mitch Snow, because with Kat Espinda, they're digging into the problems in that local court. I forget the name, which I've been working global for 20 years. So, this is what I keep on saying to anybody who's like, well, I'm like, oh, take your pick. What do you want? It's kind of like with the human trafficking type of thing. Tell me what hair color, what country, what city, whatever the profile you want, I can go out and get it. It's happening everywhere. It's so pervasive. If that's what your problem is you need to check your little boxes and have your, to get up on the podium for all y'all. We're good. Just as long as we get this out there. Okay. See, that's what we're dealing with.
Totally switch gears. Put Tucker to the side. I want to go to a motion that was recently unsealed in the Tyler Robinson case. And I want to raise a couple of issues that I see in the motion. The first issue is that this motion should have never been sealed in the first place. I think the judge is allowing things, and I just pulled the case file today. The judge has so many filings under seal. It's not proper. It can't be proper. This is inappropriate. It should not be happening. The judge needs to get control over this case. He's letting the lawyers walk all over him. So that's the first thing I want to raise. The second thing is, I really just wanted to play that part again because I pulled the case file again today. The amount of documents under seal in this file.
Yeah, see, when you get into trying to, produce solutions or even discuss the problems in the courts, everybody points their finger at everybody else. Oh, the judges, it's the lawyer's fault. The lawyers, it's the judge's fault. One of my favorite was a judge told a victim of the court that she should have hired somebody who went to law school. It was her fault because her lawyer was incompetent.
Are absolutely ludicrous. Guys, we do not live in North Korea. We don't live in North Korea. We don't live.
No, we don't, but not much to believe. As I say, I'm working globally, and everybody around the world. Well, I haven't talked to anybody in North Korea, but yeah, everybody. It's everywhere. All of the courts are the same problem. You go, oh, look, we're a democracy. It doesn't change anything for the people on the ground.
Live in Cuba. We don't live in, I don't know where else, China maybe, whoever else has secret proceedings against their political opponents or criminals. This should be a public case. This is a routine murder. This is a routine murder. People get charged with murder every day in state court. This is a state court murder case in Utah County, Utah. Why is anything sealed? Who cares?
Why aren't we doing anything about our violent society where we got murders all over the place? No, 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 because that makes lots of money for y'all.
There's too much unknown here. And it's a problem mostly created by the defense, admittedly. But it's becoming a problem because, and it's something we'll play in a little bit, people are taking sides based on evidence they don't have. And they're saying stupid things like, Tyler Robinson's 100% guilty. I can tell you that right now. There's no way he didn't do it. You haven't even seen like a third of the legal filings, assuming you're like me and actually open it every now and then and read them. I think I've read most everything in there. Assuming you're like me and every couple of weeks, every week, you open it and see what's been filed in the last week. You haven't even seen everything. And even if you read everything publicly available, you've only seen like a third of the legal filing. So that's problem number one. This should not have anything sealed. This is not a sexual crime where we're protecting the identity of a victim, and I'm all in favor of sealing stuff in that situation. This is not involving children, either children of a violent crime or a sexual crime, or even children, dealing with divorce. I am all in favor of that. Children don't have the right to put objections on the record. They don't have the right to review evidence.
See, the problem with the whole sealing and like with children is the courts are trafficking children. So the sealing of that is being used to protect those, the trafficking of children. And this is the exact same thing with the International Hague Convention on Child Abduction. And the issue there, again, they only look at who has jurisdiction over the case. Well, if we have children being handed over to a pedophile father, they don't look at that. That's been covered up at the national level and that country. But the Hague Convention, they don't even look at that. They just say, who has jurisdiction here? Which is, usually it's determined by where you're residents. So this is where, like, two American people can end up in foreign courts in their divorce. Now, there are ways you could, and that's also the if you have two parents, most of the time, unless there is some sort of abuse, most of the time parents work it out between themselves, and you sign some papers and it's done. But in the cases where we do have abuse, the courts are being used to protect the abusers, and the children are being victimized. So that the sealing of the cases with the children involving, like, any kind of adoption, any kind of, or the custody issues, the foster care and stuff like that, we've got to find a happy medium here. Because I understand the protecting, minor children and protecting identities, but they also, everybody in the system has to recognize that this is a serious, serious, serious problem. And Facebook, they know about this. They have Facebook pages all the time of mothers trying to protect themselves, and judges telling them that they got to shut down their Facebook page.
Have the right to hire their own attorneys. And so they are basically without protection. So I'm fine sealing all of that. But a 22-year-old kid murders a 31-year-old man. Do you know how many cases are like that pending in America right now? Millions. Open the file. What's in it? I want to know. I want to know if our government is pursuing the right guy. And if they are, I want to know they're doing it well on my behalf, on your behalf. And if they're pursuing the wrong guy, I want to know, because I have a right to know as my government prosecuting innocent people. This is something we all have a right to do. You can go down to almost any courthouse in America, walk into the clerk's office. They either have a computer terminal or they'll just start pulling files off the back. What do you want to see? There might be a small charge associated with it, but it's usually nominal, a few bucks.
See, this is where we need to get the pissed off moms out of their offices and having it all, and out of the shopping malls and spending money and getting indebted and all of that crap, and get them together and say, you know what? We don't have to go out to restaurants and order in every day. I can cook, and it costs a shitload less money. You know what? We don't have to go on these jet-setting vacations all of the time and spend money and spend money and spend money. And I can actually spend my time. We can live on one salary and, or, the mom, there's all sorts of different, she can work part-time, um, different opportunities, but go back to trad and, oh, on your your free time, instead of doing the patchwork quilts and lace and stuff, go down to the courthouse. Say, yeah, we want to look at some of the cases that have been going by here.
I'm so mystified by the desire to seal all of this, considering especially all of the weird things that happened in the immediate aftermath, like the removal of the SD cards, paving over the crime scene, finding a gun dogs couldn't find. Like, there are a lot of weird things that happened in the immediate aftermath of this. We'll talk about some more of them tonight.
For example, with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, everybody knew what was going on. Everybody. And it was one time, it was when in Palm Beach, when the whole thing, the only reason that he had anybody come after him was some mother, her daughter said, yeah, I gave a massage to some old fart. I mean, her mom was like, what? She went down to the police station. Oops, as Jeffrey Epstein said.
But I wanted to play it for that reason, but I also wanted to play it, let me play it just another minute or so, at most. In this motion is disclosed something we didn't know. And it has to do with a bullet fragment, a bullet jacket fragment that was recovered during the autopsy. So I want to get to this. Let me see if I can make this a little larger here. So this is a motion filed by the news media. And you got a list of all the people here. Salt Lake Tribune. That's what I want to get to. It wasn't even Tyler's team that filed it. It wasn't the state that filed it. This motion was filed by the news media. And it's up there on the screen. You can look at it. The Salt Lake Tribune, St. George News, the AP, Fox 13, Mallard County Chronicle Progress, KOAL Radio, KEUR-FM Radio, Lehigh Free Press, this is CBS Broadcasting, Fox News Media, Law and Crime. This is a motion filed by the media. But for the motion filed by the media, we would not have, your humble host and our humble audience, our very high IQ audience, would not have known all the way back on March 15th that there was a bullet jacket fragment. I have no idea why it just broke into the news yesterday. And I do, because the defense finally filed a motion. But it was buried in there. I found it buried in there. Just happened to trip over it. But it was just buried in the middle of their thing. It might have even been in a footnote, or is it in like a little, in my mind, I can picture it. It was at the bottom of the page, kind of indented. So I don't remember if it was a footnote or if it was just a quotation that kind of widow orphaned over a couple of pages. But we covered that. And so I was a little mystified yesterday when everyone started making hay about it. But them making hay about it allowed me to kind of rethink my thoughts on it. And I think it's just absolutely devastating to the prosecution's case. Just devastating. I started watching videos this morning about why bullets fragment. Why would a 30-06 bullet fragment? Almost always they fragment when they hit something incredibly hard, like a femur, a hip bone, a shoulder blade. I dare say, if they get the right expert, they'll have trouble countering the defense's position that a bullet does not fragment in the neck. I'm going to tell you right now, I did a lot of research very early. It just doesn't look like it happens. So I think this is devastating. I think this is really devastating, but I don't want to get all tripped up on it. What I do want to talk about is...
See, this is why the evidence is so, minimal, and the case of the prosecution is so weak that they got to have the witch hunt. And that's where the TPUSA comes in, and the Erica Kirk and Megyn Kelly saying, oh, Tyler Robinson, he did it, and he should be, death penalty. Send him to the electric chair. And Megyn Kelly even wanted to be there when they did it. I was horrified. How, once again, Megyn Kelly is a freaking lawyer. They've got these lawyer podcasters all over the place. Glenn, it starts with a K or something. He's been around for a long time. He's another one. I mean, occasionally he's on the mark, but I'm like, you're just a hack.
I'm going to move that piece. I want to talk specifically about a piece of evidence that's missing. We're talking about all this evidence there is. We have all this evidence. We know where it is. We know there's a screwdriver. There's dispute over whose DNA is on the screwdriver. Where was the screwdriver found? Could the rifle have been used without the screwdriver? A lot of discussion.
I never understood the story about the screwdriver. And for example, the story that the shotgun was taken apart at the top of from the roof and then put to get back together when they got down. If you look at the image of the person running with that gun, with supposedly a towel, something draped over it, again, no one can identify who that person is. I think even like with the special technology or something, I don't think you're going to be able to zoom in and be able to get enough detail of who that person is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. I think it would have come out. But anyway, regardless, the gun, what he's carrying is long. That's not been taken apart. He's not carrying two objects. He's carrying one long object. So he didn't, whoever that was, didn't break down the gun on top of the roof and transport it and then put it back together again. What we saw was somebody with a long gun. Why is what is the screwdriver about? What is the story about him taking the gun apart and putting it back together? Now, I understand that going up the stairs, he took it apart when it was, and then would put it in a backpack, but he didn't have a big enough backpack, so he obviously didn't have it there. So the gun would obviously had to have already been placed up on the roof. Whoever it is that they're coming up the stairs saying he had a gun shoved down his pants, he didn't have a gun shoved down his pants. He didn't have a gun anywhere, or in his, a shotgun. If he had he could have hidden a handgun in there, but we're not talking about that. So he didn't have a shotgun. So that shotgun would have had to have been up on the roof. Why would have been taken apart? Why is the screwdriver in this story? What is its significance? And why is nobody asking what the frick with the screwdriver? That's what I don't understand.
Discussion about the screwdriver. We're aware it exists. We don't know how it got there. We don't know whether it was used. We don't know if Tyler Robinson even knew it was there, but we are aware there's a screwdriver. Become an important piece of evidence.
But why? Apparently, it's not in the charging documents. So
the second thing is the gun. There's a gun there. It was found. Whether it was placed there, whether Tyler Robinson brought it there, whether somebody else brought it there, all that is up for discussion. All that's up for debate. Well, his DNA was on it, dummy. I have a lot of guns. My DNA's on all of them. I clean them. I put them back with bare hands. DNA's on it. Sometimes
this is one of the things that I keep on pointing. For example, the Amanda Knox case in Italy. That's another high-profile case. They said she was the one who killed her roommate because her DNA was on the kitchen knife that was used to kill the roommate. If it is a kitchen knife, whoever is living in that area, in that place, and then everybody who has come there and who might have touched the kitchen knife. You had a party, somebody might have gone in the kitchen and touched the kitchen knife to cut something. Their DNA would be there. That's when you do an investigation and you rule out, well, what DNA should we be expecting to find on this weapon? Because what DNA we're expecting to find there, we can't just jump to a conclusion that it would be them, that they are the murderer, because the DNA should be there. I mean, this is so basic and people don't get it. It's not even funny.
You don't clean them. You just put them back. DNA's all over it, right? So we're aware of that. But we're aware that the evidence exists. But there's a key piece of evidence that we know is missing. And we know it's missing because Candace Owens first told us it was missing, and no one ever disputed her. And as I look through the affidavit, as I look through the information, what we're calling the charging document, colloquially as investigators, everybody's referring to the charging document, it's technically called the information. But as we look at these documents, there is a key piece of evidence missing that's not identified. And I want to go through a few clips here because I want to show you why I'm so concerned that this evidence is missing. I will start with the #1 podcaster in America and let her explain to you what she thinks initially happened to this key piece of evidence.
Challenger go by. Source tells me that they saw him dropping near
brown nosing the #1 podcaster in America. And the thing is I find it a little suspicious that Candace Owens has become the #1 podcaster in America on Charlie Kirk's assassination. I mean, suspicious is not the word, I guess. It's just a little odd.
this Dairy Queen, that there's a cemetery, and he was dropping clothes into that cemetery. Now, we have not gotten anything from the feds about where the clothing was dropped off, where he changed, nothing.
I remember that. I logged that in the back of my head at the time, and I thought, what a weird story. What a weird story. And then the story got weirder. Because after she tells us about the clothes being thrown away, I remember watching a video from the very talented creator, Ryan Matta, where he showed us this video here. Now, you might think, but what does this have to do with clothes? Well, I will tell you in just a moment. But I want you to watch this real quickly. We've watched this before. Let me put it on a little faster speed. We don't need it.
Yeah, this is another thing. You know, Ryan Matta, he's documentary film producer, and he does one after another. There's the one very good about CPS. My thing with all the documentarians, I'm like, yeah, okay, great. But we got the evidence. Let's do something about these problems. Y'all just keep on. I mean, my neighbor, another neighbor, she's actress, model and stuff, Colombian. But she was my neighbor in Bogota. She was my neighbor in Madrid. And she was like, oh, yeah, I did another documentary about the drug problems in Colombia and stuff. I was like, it was years ago. I was like, that's been done how many times? And I, the trad wife, well, you all were all off in Bogota with, you know, advancing your careers and having it all as career women. And I'm this trad wife. I'm the one who was at the American Embassy asking the embassy and the State Department people when they did the presentation of selling the Plan Colombia, excuse me, it's all well and good to get rid of drug production, but as long as the consumption's rising in the United States and Europe, the production's just going to go elsewhere. See, everybody is just make money off the whole freaking thing and keep the ball rolling.
Regular. So I'm going to put it on 2X. This thing's going to fly. And I'm putting.
In the meantime, more and more kids, we have 600,000 kids each year who die of drug overdose.
On mute. All right, that car in the background. Oh, I'm pointing at my screen. That's not helping. This car in the background up here on the top left. That is allegedly Tyler Robbins' car. It rolls in, it parks. Now keep in mind, this is on 2X. Everything's happening twice as fast. Parks for a little while. You'll see this white SUV in the foreground here. This first car parked right here. Not this front row next to the columns, but this first row in the back that's kind of to the left and right of where we are. You'll see it roll out of its parking spot in a moment. And when it does, it will kind of go to the left, circle around, and pull behind Tyler Robinson, and they will drive off together. Almost as if they were together. And I would present this if someone was asking me about the position of whether or not Tyler Robinson worked alone. I would point to a video like this. I would say, what do you think here? Because here's how I would explain it to a jury. What do you think a jury would do? That to me is a fruitful discussion more than, Okay, so you saw the SUV pull out. It will now circle around inexplicably. There it is right there. And right as it pulls up to here, Tyler Robinson moves and they pull out together. And off they go. So it looks like in that situation, at least to me, it looks like they were together. That's not why I wanted to show you the video. I wanted to show you the video because of how the video was obtained. The video was obtained because whoever works at that store, the feds showed up and said, hey, we'd like to look at your surveillance footage. And the employee says, why? Why do you want to look at our surveillance footage? Well, we want to look at your surveillance footage because Tyler Robinson's phone pinged in this location, and we want to know if you picked him up. That was an interesting data point. So we have a data point where Candace says she has a source who said he was seen in the cemetery throwing clothes away, dropping clothes off, whatever. Then we have someone say that his phone pinged in this location. And so they went over there to get that. And now I want to go to a couple of the documents that we have in this. Because one of the documents, is the probable cause affidavit. This is the first statement of facts that was raised in this case. When encountered in person by investigators in Washington County on September 12th, early morning hours, Robinson was observed in clothing consistent with the surveillance images. And it describes him in a plain maroon t-shirt, light colored shorts, black hat, white logo, and light colored shoes. This leads us with the understanding that he did not have his black clothing that he was alleged to have had on at some point. So when he's first spotted, he's in this plain maroon t-shirt. Weird, huh? Lots of plain maroon t-shirts that day. Light colored shorts, black hat with white logo, light colored shoes. At some point, he then changes into the black outfit. This goes the story. And then he goes to drop the gun off, allegedly, in the woods, changes clothes, I guess back into this, I'm assuming. And then goes to the cemetery to drop off the clothes. It was interesting to me. Because as I think about this, I think, where is that black set of clothes? And I'll tell you why I'm so concerned with the black set of clothes in a second. Now we go to the information. We're going to look at this a few times tonight, but I want to go to the charging document and I want to look at the clothing again. Because on count 4, we'll go down to the statement in a moment, but I want to start here on count 4. On count 4, on the obstruction of justice, this is a second-degree felony. He did, with intent to hinder, delay, or prevent investigation, destroy, conceal, or remove the clothing he wore during the shooting. He destroyed, concealed, or removed the clothing he wore during the shooting. But we know where he went. We know where he went. We know he went by the DVD store, where whatever that store was, where they had a video of him driving outside. We know at least one witness told Candace he was seen at the cemetery. And more importantly, we know that the feds or the state had the capacity to retrace his steps moment by moment because there's a cell phone. The cell phone is what led them to the DVD store. Now, what we don't know is, was Tyler Robinson in possession of a cell phone or did somebody else have it? In other words, if you're going to commit a crime, tell me what makes more sense. I have to go, someone's asked me to conspire with them to commit a crime. And they say, your job is to go on campus and surveil. I need you to surveil campus. And I say, okay, I can surveil campus. I'm a good surveiller. I've got great peepers, really good peepers. I don't hear so well, but I got great peepers. I can surveil the best with anybody. And so I go on campus to surveil. What am I likely not to take with me? My cell phone. I'll probably leave the cell phone in the hotel room, or I'll leave it in the car, or I will leave it at my house back in Utah. I don't know where I'm going to leave it, but I'm probably not going to take my cell phone because I'm not an idiot. If someone was trying to frame me for a crime, they might carry my cell phone that I'm not carrying and not even worried about where my cell phone is because I don't have it. I left it in a drawer. I used to have a friend that was so paranoid he had a microwave in his office, and every time you walked into his office, you had to put your cell phone in the microwave. That's crazy. That's the kind of people I know. But the cell phone becomes a real issue because the cell phone, we all, instinctively view the cell phone as an extension of us, right? It's always next to us. It's sitting right here when we go to sleep. It's sitting right here while we work. It's in our pocket when we're out walking around. You feel naked without it. You don't go to the store without it. You don't go to the gym without it. You don't go to work without it. You don't go into the kitchen without it. Take it in there so you can watch podcasts while you listen. Your cell phone's always within a couple of feet of you.
Oh my Lord, that's a sad thing to admit about Americans. Oh God, we got to stop that. Everybody's addicted to their cell phones.
And so it's natural for us to assume that if his cell phone was pinging, that we would know where he is. But it's more natural for me, thinking like a criminal, that he wouldn't even know where his cell phone was. He would think he knew where his cell phone was because he left it at point A. But if somebody was trying to frame him and drive around a parking lot and be seen and park and make it really obvious I'm being seen, someone might take that cell phone with them. So I'm looking at this more of if people close to Tyler who would have had access to his cell phone that he dropped off because he's not an idiot, and he's not going to walk on campus with his cell phone while he's trying to pull off the crime of the century, someone else might have grabbed his cell phone. And it might have been someone else driving his car. Hey, you go surveil, I'll take your car. Or maybe Don't take your keys either. We don't got RFID in them, whatever. We don't know it. Leave your keys, leave your car, park away from campus, walk into campus. And then someone else takes his keys, they take his cell phone, they drive around, and they leave a trace of Tyler Robinson all over town. Not only that, they might have access to his code if it's a boyfriend or whatever, right? Or maybe he just doesn't lock his phone. There are people like that. And so you can text anything you want. You can play games. You can get on Discord. There's all kinds of things you can do. If you have someone's phone, you can be them. You can be them. You might not be able to log into banking, but you could probably log into the Wordle. Log into Discord, maybe. I don't know. If you know the password. And so I thought about this because of the tip of where his clothes were at the cemetery.
That's why it's important for people not to have a pen to log in. Working in the restaurant business, you see how many times people leave their cell phone behind. I mean, of course, we hold them and we'll, they'll come back and get it. But, if you leave it, and people are doing that all the time, you leave your cell phone and it's not got a pin on there, people can get in there and do all sorts of stuff.
I thought, what a weird place to put clothes. But I actually think that might have been him at the cemetery. Because by that time, hours had passed. He might be completely unaware of what's happened. If you're Tyler Robinson, the patsy, you might have no idea that they've framed you for this, that they took your cell phone onto campus and your cell phone up to the roof, and they got some guy's business partner's son that looks just like you to walk up the stairwell or whatever. Or some guy named Robbie. Walk up the stairwell. I don't know. You might have no idea. So you're just there eating a McFlurry, right? You're getting your chicken tendies. You've got a Blizzard. Maybe you like M&Ms. Maybe you like Reese's Pieces. You're not even thinking about murder at this point. You're just sitting there eating your tendies and your Blizzard, not a care in the world. Someone calls you and says, hey, get rid of those clothes. Oh, why? Well, you were spotted on campus in them. You need to get rid of them. There's a cemetery across the street. Go throw them over there. Regardless, the clothes become an important piece of evidence. Think about the consequences had he not thrown the clothes away. Like, he didn't throw his maroon shirt and shorts away and he was seen in those. Think about the consequences if those clothes were recoverable. What kinds of evidence could we get from them? Well, we would obviously be able to get DNA evidence from him. He would sweat in them. He might snot in them. We sneeze. We just have aerosolized air that we breathe in and out. All this is captured. All of it has DNA in it. It all falls on you and it's captured. And sensitive medical equipment can pick that up. You can run tests on it, like PCR tests. You can amplify the DNA and you might be able to figure out whether it matches Tyler Robinson or not. So DNA is one thing we could get off of. But the other thing we might be able to get off of them is the gravel dust on top of the roof. Might be able to get the gravel dust on top of it. If you lie down in a prone position in gravel, you're going to get little pieces around here. It would be lime gravel. I don't know what they have out there. Is it a lava rock? Is it sandstone? I don't know what kind of gravel they use out in Utah, but there's some kind of gravel on that roof. And you'll have particular dust that can be matched there. You might have pollens that blew in that day or that week, and they might be able to match those to what's on your clothing. You also might have gunshot residue. If you take a 30-06 rifle and it's shouldered, which a 30-06 almost would have to be shouldered, and your eye's right over that eye, he's kind of wall-eyed if you look at him. That might make it difficult for him to shoot anyway, but that's neither here nor there. That's for other people to argue. But you got your sights down there and you're right over that bolt. Well, there's going to be a primer explosion. There's going to be a gunpowder explosion. There's going to be gunshot residue. It's going to blast back on you. If you go shooting, you smell like this stuff. It's in your beard. It's on your cheeks. It gets on your hands. You can smell it. Even if you just take one shot, you can smell it. So that would be on those clothes. Now, that might be exculpatory had he not thrown them away. If he was being set up as a patsy and somebody said, hey, go throw your clothes away. There's a cemetery across the street. Just chunk them in there. And someone else comes behind, picks them up and steals them. Or they just stay until the trash is picked up a couple days later. Whatever. But the reality is the law enforcement supposedly knew where his phone was at all times. And I'm curious if his phone pinged into that cemetery. I'm curious because I don't know who gave Candace the tip that he was seen there. And it's possible somebody that's framing him is calling and leaving tips with people. I've thought of this. That's why I'm very cautious about going forward with tips I get. Because if you're involved in framing him, you might put him places that he otherwise wasn't. If you knew his phone was there and you knew somebody was framing.
Yeah, so, and I mean, he's right. And being careful about, who's contacting him or about what and about tips and stuff like that. But also, you don't want to jump to any conclusions. I mean, it's easy. I mean, I investigate who are people all the time. You just Google them and stuff. Most people will have some sort of, footprint on the internet, and you can find out some stuff about them. It's really easy.
But that's a key piece of evidence that's missing. It's his clothing. His clothing could put whoever was in those clothing on the roof. The DNA could put those clothing on him, and you begin to put a picture together. But without that, can you put them on the roof? I want to go back to the charging documents for just a moment. And I want to ask, can we put him on the roof? Can we put him on the roof? So before I show you this, let me explain what the purpose of an information is in Utah, or in most states. In order for the government to bring you charge you with a crime, the government has to do certain things. You can't just snatch somebody off the street because you don't like them. And this is why we have a representative democracy or a representative republic and not a kingdom. Because in the old days, the king could just have his people snatch you up, never charge you, and you just stayed in jail without charges for a long time.
See, this is where he's completely wrong, and he doesn't understand about the problems in the judicial system. First off, they can just snatch you up. Well, this is the problem that we're having with foster care, adoption, family courts, and we got trafficking children all the time with this. This is huge. Yes, they can. And it's getting worse and worse and worse because of lawyers like Baron Coleman, he defended somebody from the Proud Boys. Yet he ignores me. I want, like, Stephen Miller. I even wrote a blog on LinkedIn about how he and his wife are the new Goebbels. Now, I contacted America First Legal when they first started. I said, oh, please, I got a whole slew of cases over the Viper witches, and that's the wokey liberals over, at the IMF and the World Bank. And then there's all of the, people up in Congress. You want to, Trump says he wants to drain the swamp. Well, let's drain the swamp. Here's all of the cases. We can go to town and clean it up. Oh, but see, they don't want to drain the swamp. Oh, no. Come on. I told everybody in 2015, are you kidding me? A bankruptcy building New York businessman who is in the entertainment business in Shark Tank it is your savior. That's what you're going to bring to Washington to clean up Washington. Oh, my Lord, New York has been the problem since the robber barons usurped power from the founding fathers in the 1800s. This is all ludicrous. All ludicrous.
But we have laws in place to prevent that. One of the mechanisms is that there has to be some sort of a legal filing that's signed off on by two different branches of government in order to hold you against your will. One of those is the executive branch, the law enforcement agency, the FBI, the state police.
Okay, and then also there's the case of Maria Jose Carrascosa in New Jersey. She was held for 8 years in the prison, the jail there. And she kept on filing. She's a lawyer. She kept on filing habeas corpus all the time. The Spanish consulate wouldn't get involved. It was a shit show. I don't know. When she got out, I was like, okay, let's go up against the Spaniards. Oh, no. She's not going to touch the Spaniards. We have even victims who they don't want to go up against the system. They just want to make money from it. It's really bad.
The Attorney General's office, somebody has to come up with information that outlines a series of charges against you and a plain short statement of facts from which a member of another branch, the judicial branch, can then decide whether or not those two branches working together get to decide whether or not your liberty can temporarily be deprived of. A lot of states require a grand jury. Not all states. Some states allow it to be filed by information, including Utah. That's what we have here. I'm going to show it to you in a second. And information, like I said, has been colloquially called, in this case, a charging document. People keep referring to the charging document, and I'm fine with that because that's what it is. It's a statement of the charges against you. It has a list of the counts. I think there's 7 counts in this case. There's a list of the counts against you. It has a very short statement of facts after each one, or at least something that puts you on notice with what you're charged with. Then at the end, there's a 2-page maybe statement of facts as they see them. That's all we have in this case. That's all we have. There was, before this information was filed, there was something called a probable cause affidavit. So these are 2 different documents. The probable cause affidavit is to go to the judge and get a warrant. That's to arrest you, not to keep you in jail more than a couple of days. That's to arrest you. That's before you go see the judge the first time. Under Utah law, they have then a time period of which they have to produce an information, a statement of the charges against you, the different counts you're charged with. You're charged with murder, you're charged with robbery, you're charged with, forging checks, you're charged with, whatever, kicking over someone's daffodils. I don't know. You're charged with something. They have to tell you what you're charged with. And then they have to give a plain statement of the facts as currently decided. The key thing about an information is the jury will actually see most of this document, or a lot of this document. Key part.
See, and this is, you would think that Baron would be interested in my work because I do go back into the the beginning of the civil code under the Romans, but then also under the British, and this goes back to the Magna Carta and really the structure of the court systems because it was done at the local level. And this really gets into my interest. And this is where I need to sit down with some lawyers. I mean, I don't know everything, but I know I've looked at a lot of key things and dots need to be connected. But this gets into Gonzalez Linehan versus USA, Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. The American government said that they didn't have jurisdiction control over the state and local governments. Now this gets into the British system and the issue there with which precisely the Magna Carta was really just about the lords. And it wasn't about the plebeians. And it was the landed gentry. And those are really the ones who were developing the rights. That's where it comes into how the disempowerment of women in divorce courts has had such a detrimental effect, because really the only people, the poor people, they don't have assets to divide it. It only really, touches anybody who has assets, or who are involved in custody issues. And that will often be with people for money. That's because of the money that comes with the whole system. And then, I mean, when it gets into the people without money, it's more of an indication that it's a power thing and that there's abuse. As I say, with the wealthier people, this is upper middle class. To the wealthy, I mean, oh Lord, if amongst the wealthy, the lawyers, they start salivating. But the thing is, it's just been a transference of wealth. For example, there's Ariana Huffington. That needs to be scrutinized. I'm like, wait a second, where'd she get all of this money? That was a payoff. Her husband didn't earn that money when they were married. See, they've completely flipped everything with this whole gender neutral stuff. That's just been bullshit. And they,
Parts of this document.
I'm not going to get into all of that, but it's a huge problem.
They will not see the statement of the facts, but the jury will see the charges. They'll read it out loud in all likelihood to him, unless he waives it. They'll read it out loud to the jury. They'll read it out loud to the defendant in front of the jury when the trial gets started. So I'm going to show it to you because this could become an important document. But the key thing to know is these things often are modified before trial. Sometimes they're modified during trial. Sometimes they'll modify it to add new charges. Sometimes they'll modify it to take charges away. If they add a new charge and the new charge rests on new facts, they have to go back in front of the judge for a new preliminary hearing.
Okay, so we're going to jump over this. It gets into a lot of so he gets into, this is the reasonable doubt. He's talking about reasonable doubt here.
I have to have experts in there that explain this is highly unlikely. This is reasonable doubt land. It's possible like 1 out of every 1,000 30-06 shots can stay inside the body and doesn't actually blow through the back of the neck and kill the 5 people behind him. It happens. Yeah, very rarely. Very rarely is known as reasonable doubt. That's the definition of reasonable doubt. That's what doubt is. It's not expected.
It happens very rarely. That's the definition of reasonable doubt. I think he's jumping there. Because just because it happens very rarely, you could still prove that something happened. As I say, he's simplifying reasonable doubt there. Because reasonable doubt, what you're trying to do is not prove that something occurs very rarely. What you're trying to prove in showing reasonable doubt is that the person accused couldn't have done that. Either they weren't at the place that you say they were, where the crime was committed, therefore, or that the crime was committed by somebody with black hair and he has blonde hair. So you're pulling out the facts, but the facts mean something. It's like, well, there weren't a lot of, there was in the crowd, there were 5 people with black hair. It could only be one of those 5 people because it was somebody who killed him had black hair. You see my point? Reasonable doubt is not necessarily just saying, well, something happens very rarely, therefore he's jumping the gun and dropping the ball on what a lawyer has to do to establish reasonable doubt.
It's unusual. It's highly unlikely. The fact that maybe one other person was killed with a 30-06 that didn't go through and through, maybe you could say Martin Luther King, even though it did actually exit his face and then re-enter his neck. It kind of came in here, exited here, and re-entered here. If you know the thing, it hit one of the hardest bones in his body, the mandible, and then went through his neck and then hit another one of the hardest bones in his body, his shoulder blade. Maybe. But that's the definition of reasonable doubt right there. That's it. What did it hit that fragmented it? Reasonable doubt. The guy confessed to absolutely.
See, then you have the other side come in and say, well, yeah, but it has happened. So then they're countering then they're coming at you on your reasonable doubt argument. So I just say his line there is not great.
Every element of the crime, reasonable doubt. I'm sorry, that's reasonable doubt. The guy exonerated his creepy roommate, reasonable doubt. The guy disappeared from camera for 29 minutes, reasonable doubt. The video footage of him taking the shot, allegedly taking the shot, is something you can't identify, reasonable doubt. Like, I don't understand why this is so complicated. I don't understand why people are mad at us for looking at it. It's one thing for them to say, well, I see what you're saying, but I still believe you did it. Fine, we can disagree. A jury will let us know.
This is in a normal world with normal people. That's what you would have. This man is on trial in a capital punishment case. They're asking for him to be murdered. Now, anybody who would be upset that somebody is questioning the validity of the evidence being presented and saying, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. They might not agree with you, but for them to become so angry is bizarre.
What they think. They'll look at even more evidence and they'll make a more informed decision than we are. But why are you angry with me for coming to this conclusion? That's absolutely ludicrous. Why are you calling me and Candace and others demonic and crazed and a conspiracy theorist? Because I'm looking at a set of facts that have reasonable doubt written all over them, and I'm concluding there's reasonable doubt. Why is that?
Particularly why I've been covering Gary Melton, because Gary Melton has taken this all personal against Candace. As I say, I always thought he was working for the Fed, but I think it's his wife who has a problem with Candace, and his wife also. And this is the typical, as I said, Megyn Kelly. You can look at the Kennedy women, Jackie and Ethel Kennedy, how they react. Just move on. Okay, we're good. Ethel, she just started a fraudulent human rights organization so she could pay for all of her parties. And you then have, like, with Hale Boggs, who that's also suspicious how he died. It was a plane crash in Alaska. His wife, she became Congresswoman. There was a Larry McDonald, happened also. His wife she ran, but she didn't get the position of her husband's former position. So yeah, there's a lot of wives who are acting like Erica Kirk. In fact, Erica Kirk's reaction is kind of par for the course and normal, but nobody's looking at that. None of the podcasters have looked at that angle of the whole thing.
That crazy.
And that gets into the honeypot and all of these honeypot women we've had, or all of these women who marry meal ticket husbands, and in the political arena, how that's done damage. Arianna Huffington is one case in point. And then Melania Trump, you got in the commercial arena and the political arena, with those two.
Why does that mean you're nuts? That's what I don't understand about this whole thing. And that's why I don't want to debate the issue, because this is all that can be said. Here's what they say. You believe it? I don't. What else do you want to talk about? You have a burden to prove somebody else did it. No, I don't. No, I don't. No, that's not my burden. As a matter of fact, that's not the way logic works. That's not the way legal system works. That's not the way anything works.
See, this was why I really covered and did a video about Didi Got a Podcast. And Barron's going to say that, well, that's just, he watched it, it was silly or what. No, it's really important to bring that out there and challenge this narrative and these people, because they do represent a large portion of people out there, and they do have an audience, and expose that, wait a second, you are removing the presumption of innocence on a person and putting them into this kangaroo court system. You're participating in murder of an innocent or potentially innocent person. Now, again, was he involved, as Barron is saying, oh, you're supposed to go and do this, you're supposed to go and do that, and this was an organized, by a whole group of people. Yeah, and that's also the problem of not investigating. Well, then Tyler Robinson, who were you working with? Who are the other people involved? We need to get them into court as well. But of course, that's what they want to do, because if the feds are involved, if it was a military, somehow the Trump administration is involved, well, of course, you don't want everybody spilling the beans. That's the whole point of having a patsy who doesn't really know anything. And even if he does start spilling the beans, he's really not going to know enough about all of the planning and stuff to be able to give any good information. So let's just have him. Everybody's happy. We've got somebody who died, who took the fall for the death of Charlie Kirk, and we all move on.
You're saying it happened that way. That's what the facts are that we're working from, and I don't believe them. I don't have to prove anything. I mean, I can offer reasons I don't believe them. I have some of the reasons I have more reasons I don't believe them. But that's why I don't think Zach should have been debating people. I mean, Didi debated somebody and he just annihilated her, but I don't even think he should have been debating people. It's not right.
See, this is where I disagree with him. You shouldn't be debating people. No, you should precisely be debating all of these people and bringing them on and exposing how their dialogue and their actions are undermining our democratic process and undermining a fair and just system, where it is not on the accused to demonstrate their innocence. It is on the accuser to demonstrate the guilt. That is, as I say, this goes back to the fundamentals. We can go to the Roman system. We can go to the English system under the Magna Carta. I mean, we're both our systems are a product of both. As I say, that's what I've been looking into. Now, why I'm being shut up, because I'm not a young. I mean, he falls all over Brandy and Billy. I'm not some young cute thing who's going to be like, oh, Baron, you're so wonderful. You're so wonderful. No, I mean, I agree with him. I treat him like an eagle. I'm not going to be like, oh. See, this is the problem with the podcasters. The problem, they're just following the road of the celebrity journalists. They're not going back to what journalism used to be. Even Kelly Rabon, she's been this investigative journalist. I've contacted her. I mean, they just want to get in. I mean, that really is a chat every evening. I'm like, if I had my kids and I was a divorcee with my children, I wouldn't be hanging out on the internet, having chats and stuff like that. Anyway, to each his own. But I'm like, wait a second, you're just like all of the other journalists, investigative journalists I've seen come and gone for years and years and years.
For debate. There is a series of facts. You either believe them or you don't. You're more than welcome to discuss why I don't believe them. I'm happy to have that discussion. I just did. I've been saying it for 6 months why I don't believe them. I'll be happy to say it to somebody, but I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to prove a microphone exploded. I don't have to prove he was electrocuted. I don't have to prove his neck was broken in the back of the SUV. I don't have to prove Frank Turk was in on it. I don't have to prove Erica Kirk was in on it. I don't have to prove she was at Hopkinson. I don't have to prove Andrew was on an earlier flight. Those things might tend to help my case, but they're not required. They're totally not required. So I want to switch gears. There is a gag order in this case. There is a gag order in this case. I'm going to show it to you. Because it's important, because people are violating it. Blake Neff in particular, but we'll talk about it. And for the record, let me just say this right off the bat, because I'm gonna bash Blake. I don't think Blake was in on it. You ask me right now who was in on it. I don't think Blake was in on it. I'll even lower this so I can say, Blake, I don't think you had any idea it was coming. I don't think you knew it. I don't think you had anything to do with it. I don't think you're covering it up. I don't think you were in on it. I'm a little concerned by your aggression towards the accused, particularly in light of what we're going to cover here in a month, but I don't think you were in on it. I don't think anyone in on it would have run at Blake Neff's speed away from the crime. Hitting that poor girl with a stiff arm. I don't think you were in on it. Nevertheless, I think you're violating the law or the judge's order. So we're going to talk about it. This is the infamous gag order, a protection order regarding pre-trial and trial publicity. This applies to attorneys who are associated with the prosecution and defense. It keeps them from intentionally knowing or recklessly permitting a witness, Blake Neff, investigator, consultant, staff member, or other member of the prosecution or defense team to make extrajudicial statements which, if made by the lawyer, would violate Rule 3.6. I would suggest to you, without having to pull Rule 3.6, Rule 3.6 prohibits anyone involved from saying the guy's guilty. In fact, investigators, sheriffs, DAs, whenever they do these press conferences, they're very cautious of saying, hey, we'll tell you what we know, but we cannot say that he's guilty. A jury will determine that. Nevertheless, here are the facts we've got so far. Here's why we've arrested him. But that's not a statement.
Yeah, what's his name from Japan? I had a gentleman, he contacted me, and I'm saying, yeah, the alleged this, the alleged that, and he's like, no, it really happened. It really happened. I said, no, I know, but we have to refer to this until you get the court, judgment, stating that this happened or that happened, or affirming that it happened. Then we have to refer to it as alleged, just because of the presumption of innocence. I'm not saying that this didn't happen. Is just because of the presumption of innocence, you always have to refer to that. And he was like, yeah, okay, I get it. And he wasn't upset. I said, I'm not questioning any of that. It's just as a matter of procedure, that's how you have to do it, because we do have the presumption of innocence.
Of guilt. Why? Rule 3.6. Can't do it. Not allowed to. Not allowed to. And this judge applied the same rule to witnesses identified by the prosecution and the defense. State moves to amend or clarify the court's use of the word witness as used in the publicity order because it's vague, ambiguous, and overbroad. State asserts there are over 3,000 lay witnesses. This was a concern we raised when this first came out because the judge said this applies to all witnesses. Well, there were 3,000 people there. None of them can talk about the case. The state does not know if it must inform each potential and possible witness of the prohibitions of the order. Due to the confusion, the court grants the state's motion.
Also, since it's on the internet, that could apply to millions of people. I mean,
the following clarification. This is the rule that we are operating under at present. The word witness, as used in the order, applies to all witnesses who are part of the prosecution and defense teams. Any witness, including lay witnesses, whom the prosecution or defense has a good faith belief will be called to testify at hearing or trial. They have listed some of these. We know who they are. For example, I'll show you one who I believe has violated this. Erica Kirk. Erica Kirk is under this order. As of December 16th, at least, she was notified, but I would say she was under it from the time it was issued. Please forward the attached publicity notice to, I can assure you that says Erica Kirk, because this says up here in the subject, publicity notice to Erica Kirk, which is provided as ordered by the district court. We have identified Ms. That's a short name, K-I-R-K is short, as a potential witness at trial. She almost certainly will appear as a witness at the penalty phase of trial, i.e. wife, and perhaps the guilt phase to testify generally about TPUSA and Charlie Kirk. That's the wife. That's Erica Kirk. What does this mean? This means Erica Kirk may not make extrajudicial statements, which, if made by the lawyer, would violate Rule 3.6. Rule 3.6 says you cannot say he's guilty. That's what that means. It also applies to Blake Neff. There are other documents in there that says, and for the sake of time, I'm going to speed up because I'm already over an hour and a half and my voice is ruined. There are other things in there that say anybody who was at the scene and has been notified. Blake Neff was at the scene, and I believe he was also notified in there because of the same thing, the same type of indications in this documentation, where it's pretty obvious they're talking about Blake Neff. I would think Blake Neff, Mikey McCoy, and Erica Kirk, Dan Flood, TPUSA employees, all. Now, notice that's not Andrew Coleman. He can say whatever he wants. He wasn't there. It might be unbecoming of him to say those things, considering he works at TPUSA. He works for Ms. Kirk. He is her PR person. People might assume if he says something, she believes it, but I don't know by the letter of the law it would necessarily be a violation. But I want to show you some of what I believe are violations, at least in my opinion. Here is one such example. This is Blake Neff talking about Joe Kent. Tyler Robinson literally confessed to his parents and was turned in by them and has DNA all over the weapon used to kill Charlie. But some people are obsessed with hating Israel. The same thing they're obsessed with literally every day. They will try to help a murderer get off so they can keep pursuing their daily obsession. So that's Blake Neff, Twitter post number 1. Here is another of Blake Neff declaring the guilt of Tyler Robinson in what I believe is violation of that order. Here is Blake Neff on a radio show. News about Joe Kent testifying for Tyler Robinson broke just minutes before today's show. I did not hold back my feelings about it. And I will scroll forward, and we can hear now from Blake Neff.
He says, Kent, this is Schellenberger's reporting on Substack. Kent said he knew he might be called as a witness before he made his statements that a, quote, foreign nexus.
Okay, well, that's not what I was. Oh, here it is.
Of murder. Let's refresh people. There is a murder weapon that was found near the site of the shooting. It was owned by Tyler Robinson's family.
Given to him by his grandpa.
Of the caliber used to shoot Charlie. It has his DNA all over it.
All over the casings.
They release a photo of the shooter. They are not able to find him otherwise. Tyler Robinson's parents see that photo and think, that looks like Tyler. They begin asking him things like, where is I believe it was his grandfather's gun. Mm-hmm. They start asking him this. Tyler Robinson starts talking like he might kill himself. They get a friend of the family to sit down with him. He admits that it's him. They get him to drive up to Orem and turn himself in. His parents helped him turn him in. And we run into people who say that didn't happen or that's fabricated.
There's digital.
That's totally made up. And where did Blake Neff get that story? How is that narrative started? Does this come from, I think his name is Mitchell. Did this come from the Mitchell guy who was the Boy Scout contact with Tyler? Did he come out with this story?
Confessions.
There's digital confessions, but also his parents are out there. They have never stepped forward and said this is a lie.
Well, that's not true, but wait.
They could easily do that. It would be trivial to do that.
Okay. Barron says, well, that's not true. It is true. His parents have not come. There has been no press meeting or anything from the lawyers or from Tyler Robinson's parents. I mean, you see, for example, in the Me Too stuff, they were always out there, speaking to the press the entire time. You haven't had that from Tyler Robinson's parents. Now, that is a decision of the prosecution. I mean, I think it's a mistake on the prosecution. In fact, there are some questions. There were some high-profile lawyers who contacted, who do talk to the press and do it that way, who contacted the lawyers when they first started, and apparently they were told that they weren't welcome. Now, why the defense has decided to go down that route, they've decided it, but that's not an admission of guilt. Apparently, Tyler Robinson's parents, and rightfully so, anything that you say, and this is why it's you have to be very careful, and it's usually the lawyers of a defendant who are going to speak to the press. it would never be Tyler Robinson's parents. They might be there with the lawyer, but it's the lawyer who says something. Just because you don't want to say anything that would be detrimental, and a layperson, the parents, they're not going to necessarily know what they should or shouldn't be saying, and that could be used against them in the process against their son. So it's not, and this is a point that people keep on bringing up, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course, the parents are not going to talk to the press. They shouldn't, particularly with the way the press, they turn everything around, they make up everything, the lies and all of that stuff. So if you don't say anything, you have the right to remain silent, because anything that you say can and will be held against you. And that's why it would be the lawyers. And this thing, him saying, well, they have, no, that's Brandy and Billy, who spoke with somebody who is part of the family when they were in the courthouse, but they didn't speak directly with the parents. And it's a mistake to keep on insinuating that, because then you're caught. Well, it's not technically a lie. It's just a little misinformation. And this is why you want to stick to every single detail exactly and know the details of what happened, because then, well, you said that they talked to the parents, but they didn't talk to the parents. Oh, yeah, well, see, that's why it's important to be informed.
That if it was the case, they have not done that.
Okay. That's another example of Blake Neff basically saying he's guilty.
Yeah.
You would think that's all. No, in fact, it's not. Here's another example of Blake Neff flagrantly disregarding this order. Tyler Robinson confessed to his parents, who turned him in. His DNA was found on the trigger of the rifle, found dumped in the woods near the UVU. Tyler has text messages with his boyfriend confessing to the crime. A person resembling Tyler was caught on surveillance video. That actually reads more like it's in favor of the defense, but whatever. I don't think he meant it that way. Lest you are confused whether Tyler Robinson was at the scene and the order applies to him, I would submit to you this. Not only did we see him running at Blake Neff speed away from the crime, we also have him stating as much on the record.
I would say I was about 10 feet to Charlie's left.
10 feet to Charlie's left. I'm not going to play the rest of it just for time, but you understand my point here. We are being accused of tainting the jury pool. They're looking at your humble host. They're looking at Candace. They're looking at Coach. They're looking at Dee Dee. They're looking at other people, podcasters. They're looking at content creators, Ryan Matta, people on X. And they're saying
have every legitimate right to, just like any murder trial, just like any crime within their community, particularly elevated when you're a supposed journalist, to ask questions. In fact, that should be encouraged. Hell, if somebody would start asking questions in their neighborhood, no. I mean, with my mom, que será, whatever. You're left on your own. Too bad.
These guys are tainting the jury pool. I'm not under any order. The prosecution never contacted me and said I'm not allowed to talk about it. Did they contact you, Blake Neff Speed? Now, keep in mind, I don't think you were in on it. I think, in my opinion, there were people you work with that were aware it was going to happen, maybe even help coordinate it. But I don't think it was Blake. Maybe, but just as I'm sitting here today, I don't think it was him. But if you're going to accuse us of attempting to taint the jury pool while you're out here flagrantly, in my opinion, disregarding the judge's order, commenting on his guilt or innocence, which you're not supposed to be doing, in my opinion, you're not supposed to be doing. Why are you doing that? Why are you pointing the finger at us? You know what I think it is? I'm of the opinion, after talking to several people behind the scenes, I'm of the opinion the prosecution's case is falling apart. It's not as strong as they were led to believe when they inherited it. I don't think the police think it's a very strong case. The FBI has walked away after prepping some of the evidence. They get the bullet fragment back, no definitive match. They realize some of the people that allegedly made statements that made their way into the probable cause statements are going to say they didn't say that. And what you're left with is a video that is very unconvincing that it's Tyler Robinson. It's unconvincing it's anybody.
Well, the thing, one has to question. So if the prosecution knows that these evidence, that these testimonies, these witnesses are going to come in court and say, I didn't say that, and deny, well, why would you do that? You do that because then you get the patsy arrested, and then you have the process that takes care of itself.
It could be Michael Jordan up there. I mean, it looks nothing like, it could be a 6'6" black guy. It could be, a 5'2" white girl. I mean, it could be anything in between. We have no way of knowing who that is. The linchpin was the parents' testimony, and I'm telling you right now, that's falling apart. The linchpin was the gun, and I'm telling you right now, that's falling apart. And they're panicked. They're panicked. And when the case falls apart, if Tyler Robinson walks or is convicted of a lesser included offense, or they file some sort of superseding indictment, have another preliminary hearing, tag him with, assisting with a murder rather than committing a murder, takes a plea deal to something.
But if they have him assisting with a murder, don't they have to come up with who he assisted?
It falls apart, or when it falls apart. These guys want to be able to point a finger at your humble host, at Candace Owens, Coach Colin, and others. They want to point a finger at us and say, we're the reason it happened. We are the shame of the Charlie Kirk investigation. We tainted the jury pool. We tainted witnesses. This thing was open. It was shut. There was a mountain of evidence. It was a Mount Everest of evidence. It wasn't just any old mount. It was Mount.
I agree with him. See, this way, the way that it's been spun, this way, it's the fault of Candace Owens. It's the fault of all of the people, Baron Coleman, all of the people who have been calling out the irregularities and been asking for due process. It's their fault that we didn't get the murderer of Charlie Kirk, and the murderer walked free. That's the narrative. That's what they're spinning.
Everest. It was the tallest mountain in the land of evidence. The case was so cut and dry. It was so strong. And they're left with a case that's crumbling. Absolutely crumbling. And if the case crumbles in a way where everybody looks at it and says, that didn't just crumble, that just collapsed. They had the wrong guy. There's still somebody on the loose who did this. We've got to find that person. Well, then anyone involved remains in jeopardy. But if the case crumbles, or he takes some lesser included plea, and they can point a finger at us and try to discredit us and run us out of the conservative movement, run us out of pop culture, run us off of YouTube, run us out, try to discredit everybody. Look what they've done. They've let a murderer go scot-free. It's their fault. Then the investigation essentially remains over. Because
it's all about the conservative movement and protecting or destroying the conservative movement, and not about restoring law and order to our justice system, our political institutions, or anything like that.
People blame us. They don't blame whoever it is that actually did it. They get to maintain this legal fiction that the mountain of evidence concludes that Tyler Robinson did it, but it was our fault he didn't get convicted. That's what I think they're setting up. I think they're aware the case is collapsing.
I agree.
Collapsing quickly. And I think that puts Tyler in a great deal of jeopardy. I hope the sheriff of Utah County is a very strong individual and has Tyler very protected. Very protected. Because I worry about stuff like this. I worry about stuff like this.
Yeah, as he should.
I had one more thing, but I may push it to tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to push it to tomorrow.
Okay, so that was... Oh, I think he just gets
on
into
YouTube.
different chats.
Baron, I'm obsessed with you.
Oh.
Cannot believe you were living a normal life 7 months ago. I still live a pretty normal life. When you were born to be a podcaster. Question, how has your approach to podcasting changed the past few months with new success? That's a good question. I do a lot more research.
Question.
I have 2 other people helping me now, where I used to do it all alone. But that's different. That's new. And it's some growing pains in that you just got to learn to work together and figure it all out. But I mean, I'm a big fan that people rise to the occasion, and we get there. And I think Daisy and my sister have both risen to the occasion. We're getting better working together every day. It's becoming a smoother operation. But I still live a very normal life. I mean, I've nothing, literally, except for the fact that I sit at this desk now for 75 hours a week, where I used to sit here for 40 or 50. Almost nothing else has changed. Still go to church. I don't go to the gym quite as much because I'm here more often. I mean, everything's pretty much the same. But thank you. I'm not able to run as many errands. I'll say that. I used to be able to run more errands, and I miss that.
It's like, now that you've become a celebrity, how has your life changed? He gave up his job. a lawyer job. And
I'm well aware the company you speak of built.
oops.
Oh, you're talking about Zechariah Qureshi's company. Do we know? But I think it's BILT. We, Receipts Department, have a Daisy too. She's scared.
I think also he gets into this. It's April Fools or something. They keep on popping up all of these questions. But anyway, so yeah, I wanted to cover what he was saying because he's right. This is how it's done. Until we address the problems, all of these different problems that he acknowledged in his explanation of the court system. Well, the Tyler Robinsons, we got a dime a dozen. And they're pulling this crap all of the time. And nobody does anything about it because they're too busy playing party politics in the judicial system, the legislative branch, and the executive branch here in Washington. They don't want to, the little people. And you just get a revolving door of 10 percenters filled with economists, lawyers, PR people, HR people, managerialism at its finest. That's Burnham, 1941. He said the problem of the modern age was not communism versus capitalism, it's managerialism. So yeah, and without those people turning a blind eye to lack of due process in their court systems, that's why the richer are getting richer, and the concentration of wealth has become unsustainable, and these guys are out of control. And you got the Jeffrey Epsteins and the Jeff Bezos, the Elon Musk. The list goes on and on. One of my points with the Mars sisters, they're a Foxcroft, the Mars Candy. It's now in the hands of these are the daughters of the guy who started it. Apparently he was a real bully and abusive. But anyway, their fortune, their net worth could pay for what the country spends because of diabetes in healthcare. This country is just out of control. It's got to clean up its act from top to bottom. So, make America great. Get your shit together. And it better be quick.